At the company meeting, after an argument with my wife's male secretary, my wife, the CEO, terminated my employment and replaced me with her secretary. No explanation, no way out. As I worked out, a multimillionaire drove in and whispered, "Trust me, they'll regret this." If you've ever sat in a conference room and felt your entire world collapse in the span of 3 sentences, you know what I'm about to tell you. You know that specific flavor of humiliation, the kind that tastes like copper and feels like your chest is caving in while everyone watches. The kind where you can't even scream because your throat has closed up and your hands are shaking under the table and all you can do is sit there, nodding, pretending you're fine. I wasn't fine. The fluorescent lights hummed above us, that persistent corporate drone that had soundtracked 7 years of my life at Meridian Tech. 7 years of early mornings and late nights, of presentations polished until they gleamed, of strategies that had pushed our market share from 12% to 41%. 7 years of building something with my own hands, brick by brick, spreadsheet by spreadsheet, negotiation by negotiation. And now I was watching it end. The conference room was one of those modern glass boxes that executives love. Transparent walls, ergonomic chairs, a view of the city skyline that was supposed to inspire ambition. Instead, it felt like a fishbowl. Everyone could see in. The entire 5th floor could watch my execution if they looked up from their monitors. "We're restructuring the leadership team," my wife said. Victoria, CEO Victoria Chen Morrison, if we're being formal. My wife of 9 years, my partner of 12. The woman I'd helped build this company from a 3-person startup in a rented office that smelled like instant ramen and desperation. She sat at the head of the table, her posture perfect, her black suit immaculate, her face a mask of professional neutrality that I'd seen her use on investors and competitors, but never on me. "The board has decided that we need fresh perspectives in the C-suite," she continued. And I noticed she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at a point just above my left shoulder, the way you look at a stranger you're about to disappoint. Effective immediately, Daniel Morrison will be stepping down from his position as Chief Strategy Officer. Stepping down. As if I had a choice. As if I was climbing down a ladder instead of being shoved off a cliff. I opened my mouth, closed it. Around the table, 8 faces stared at me with varying degrees of discomfort. Linda from HR looked like she wanted to dissolve into her chair. Marcus from finance was studying his fingernails with sudden fascination. The board members, 3 gray-haired men in identical navy suits, watched with the detached interest of people observing a nature documentary. Only one person was smiling, Damian Ashford, Victoria's executive assistant, her secretary, though he hated that term and preferred chief of staff, despite never having earned the title. He sat 2 seats to Victoria's left, his legs crossed, his expression one of barely contained satisfaction. 28 years old, Stanford MBA, family money, and the kind of face that looked like it had been designed by committee to be as generically handsome as possible. I'd argued with him 30 minutes earlier. It had been stupid, the kind of territorial pissing match that happens when you put 2 men in proximity and give one of them too much authority. He'd questioned my quarterly projections in front of the team, not because the numbers were wrong, they weren't, but because he could. Because for the past 6 months, he'd been inserting himself into every decision, every meeting, every strategic conversation, always with Victoria's implicit blessing. "These numbers seem optimistic," he'd said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Perhaps unrealistic, given market conditions. The projections are based on our current pipeline and historical conversion rates," I'd replied, keeping my voice level. "Unless you have data suggesting otherwise." "I have concerns." "Concerns aren't data, Damien." His smile had been knife-sharp. "Maybe that's the problem. You've been here so long, you've stopped questioning your own assumptions." I'd leaned forward. "And you've been here 6 months and think you understand this business better than the person who built the entire strategy division from scratch. The room had gone silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Victoria had cleared her throat. "Let's take a 15-minute break." That break had been 23 minutes ago. When we reconvened, the energy had shifted. Victoria's face had hardened into something I didn't recognize, and Damien had been standing behind her chair like a bodyguard, and I'd known that something had fundamentally changed in those 23 minutes. Now, here we were. "Daniel's contributions to Meridian have been invaluable," Victoria was saying, her voice still that professional monotone that made my skin crawl. "But as we scale, we need to evolve our leadership structure. We need people who can take us into the next phase of growth." "And I can't do that," I heard myself say. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were brown, the same brown eyes I'd woken up next to for 9 years, the same eyes that had sparkled when I proposed on a beach in Bali, the same eyes that had cried happy tears at our wedding. Now, they were flat, professional, empty. "The decision has been made," she said. "By who?" I pressed. "The board, or him?" I jerked my head toward Damien, who had the audacity to look offended. "Daniel," Victoria's voice sharpened, "this isn't the time or place." "Then when is? When exactly was I going to be informed that my career was ending, that my position was being eliminated?" "It's not being eliminated," she said, "but it's being filled." The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. "By someone more suited to our current needs," Victoria continued, and now I understood. Now the whole sick picture assembled itself in my mind, like a puzzle made of razor blades. "Damien will be assuming the role of Chief Strategy Officer effective Monday." Laughter bubbled up in my throat, but it came out as something closer to a choke. "You're joking." "I'm not. He's been here 6 months. He has the qualifications. I built this department. And now it needs different leadership." Victoria's hands were flat on the table, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. I'd picked that ring, saved for 3 months to afford it, back when we were broke and ambitious and so goddamn in love that we used to talk until 3 a.m. about the company we'd build together, the life we'd create, the empire we'd forge side by side. How long ago had that version of us died? Had there been a specific moment, or had it been a slow fade, so gradual I hadn't noticed until I was sitting here, being erased? "This is bullshit," I said quietly. "Your severance package will be generous," Victoria replied, as if I'd asked about compensation instead of justice. 6 months' salary, full benefits through the end of the year, and positive references. Linda will have the paperwork ready by end of day. "I don't want severance. I want my job." "That's not possible." "Why?" The word came out ragged. "Tell me why. Give me one real reason." For a moment, just a flash, something flickered across her face. Guilt? Regret? But it was gone before I could name it, replaced by that infuriating professional mask. "We need to move in a different direction," she said. "That's corporate speak, that's nothing. It's all I can offer you. Can't or won't." Silence. The humming lights, the distant sound of phones ringing in the hallway outside. Damien shifted in his chair and I saw it, the smallest smirk tugging at his lips. He was enjoying this. This was exactly what he wanted. I stood up. The chair scraped against the floor, too loud in the heavy quiet. 8 pairs of eyes tracked me as I gathered my notebook, my pen, the leather portfolio that Victoria had given me for our 5th anniversary. "To my partner in crime and business," the inscription read. I wondered if she remembered. "Daniel," she said, her voice softer now, almost human, almost the woman I'd married. I looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in months. When had the distance started? When had we stopped having breakfast together? Stopped talking about anything that mattered? Stopped being partners and become just colleagues who shared a house? Don't, I said. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. I walked out of the conference room with my head high and my hands steady, even though everything inside me was screaming. The 5th floor stretched out before me, my floor, my domain, the place I'd built from nothing into a 30-person department that generated 60% of the company's revenue. People glanced up as I passed, their faces carefully neutral, and I knew they already knew. Office gossip moved faster than light. My office, former office, was at the end of the hall. Corner view, floor-to-ceiling windows, my name on the door in brushed steel letters, Daniel Morrison, Chief Strategy Officer. I'd been so proud of that nameplate, so stupidly, naively proud. I went inside and closed the door, sat down at my desk, put my head in my hands. The city sprawled below me, indifferent to my collapse. Somewhere down there, people were living their lives, completely unaware that mine had just imploded. The unfairness of it made me want to laugh, or scream, or put my fist through the window. I did none of those things. Instead, I started packing. 7 years fit into 3 cardboard boxes, which seemed impossible. Diplomas and industry awards, the photo of Victoria and me at the company's Series B celebration, a snow globe from the Tokyo office opening, personalized business cards that would never be used. Each item felt like an artifact from someone else's life, a past that had ended without my permission. My phone buzzed, a text from my brother. "Dude, I'm seeing some weird stuff on LinkedIn. You okay?" Of course, Damien had probably already updated his profile. Thrilled to announce my new role as Chief Strategy Officer at Meridian Tech. I could see it without looking. I turned my phone face down and kept packing. It was nearly 6 p.m. when I carried the last box to my car. The parking garage was mostly empty, the concrete tomb echoing with my footsteps. My Audi sat in my assigned spot, Morrison, CSO, painted on the asphalt in white letters, and I had to laugh at that. Even the parking space was a reminder of what I'd lost. I'd just loaded the second box into the trunk when I heard it, the low, throaty purr of an expensive engine. A black Bentley Bentayga rolled into the garage, its headlights cutting through the fluorescent dimness. It pulled into a visitor spot 3 spaces from mine, and the driver's door opened. The man who emerged was in his 60s, silver-haired, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never had to prove himself, who'd been born into certainty and had built an empire on top of it. I recognized him immediately. Everyone in the industry would have. Richard Castellano, venture capitalist, serial entrepreneur, tech industry legend, worth somewhere north of $800 million, depending on which Forbes article you believed. He'd been in the news recently for a massive acquisition in the AI space, but I couldn't remember the details. My brain felt like static. He walked toward me, his leather shoes clicking on concrete, and I straightened up automatically. "You don't slouch in front of Richard Castellano." "Daniel Morrison," he said. It wasn't a question. "Mr. Castellano." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I didn't know you were visiting Meridian." "I'm not. I'm visiting you." He stopped a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "I heard about what happened today." Of course he had. Men like Richard Castellano heard everything that mattered in this industry, often before it happened. "News travels fast," I said. "It does." He glanced at the boxes in my trunk, then back at my face. "Especially when it's unjust." Something in my chest tightened. "I'm not looking for pity." "Good. I'm not offering any." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something just above a whisper, intimate and conspiratorial. "I'm offering you something better." I should have asked what. Should have been professional, cautious, smart. Instead, I just stared at him, too exhausted to play games. He smiled, a small, knowing curve of his lips that held secrets and promises, and maybe a little bit of danger. "Trust me, Daniel. Richard Castellano said, his eyes locked on mine. "They'll regret this." And then he walked back to his Bentley, got in and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking garage with 3 boxes of my former life and a promise that felt like lightning in my veins. I didn't know what he meant, but I was going to find out. The house was dark when I got home. Not just dark, empty dark. The kind of darkness that has weight to it, that presses against your chest and reminds you that you're alone even when you shouldn't be. I stood in the doorway with my boxes stacked in my arms, keys still dangling from the lock, and listened to the silence of a 4,000-square-foot house that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. Victoria wasn't home. Of course she wasn't. She was probably still at the office, celebrating her decisive leadership with Damien and the board, toasting to fresh perspectives and new directions and all the other euphemisms people use when they mean, "I just destroyed someone's career, and I'd rather not think about it." I dropped the boxes in the foyer. They landed with a hollow thud that echoed through the marble entryway, and I stood there for a moment, staring at the abstract art on the walls, pieces Victoria had chosen, expensive and incomprehensible, the kind of art you buy because it signals taste rather than because you actually like it. When had this house stopped feeling like home? When had everything stopped feeling like anything? I walked through the rooms like a ghost haunting his own life. The living room with its uncomfortable designer furniture that we never sat on. The kitchen with its restaurant-grade appliances that we never cooked with because we were always working, always busy, always prioritizing the company over everything else. The dining room table that seated 12 but had only ever hosted business dinners. Never friends, never family, never just us. Our wedding photo hung in the hallway, professionally shot, expensively framed. Victoria in white lace, me in a Tom Ford tux, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. We looked happy. We looked like people who believed in forever. I wondered when that photo had become a lie. The master bedroom was exactly as I'd left it this morning. Bed made with military precision, Victoria's side barely disturbed because she always woke up before me, always had her first coffee, and answered her first emails before I'd even opened my eyes. Her nightstand held a stack of business books and her tablet. Nothing personal, nothing soft. Mine had a thriller I'd been meaning to read for 6 months and a watch case. We didn't even sleep close anymore. Somewhere along the way, the middle of our king-sized bed had become a demilitarized zone. I loosened my tie, kicked off my shoes, and lay down on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day played on loop in my mind. Victoria's flat voice, Damien's smirk, the board members' uncomfortable silence, Richard Castellano's cryptic promise. Trust me, they'll regret this. What did that mean? What could a venture capitalist possibly do about my wife firing me from my own company? And why would he care? Men like Richard Castellano didn't involve themselves in petty office politics. They operated at a different altitude entirely, where the air was thin and the stakes were measured in billions. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket, half expecting Victoria, half dreading it. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something, instinct, curiosity, desperation, made me swipe to accept. Daniel Morrison. I didn't recognize my own voice. It sounded like gravel. "Mr. Morrison, this is Richard Castellano." Smooth, confident, the voice of a man who'd never doubted himself. "I hope I'm not calling too late." I sat up. No, it's fine. I'm surprised to hear from you." "I imagine you're surprised by a lot of things today." A pause, the sound of ice clinking in a glass. "Are you somewhere private?" "I'm home." "Alone?" The question should have seemed invasive, but somehow it didn't. Somehow, it felt like he already knew the answer. "Yes," I said. "Good. I have a proposition for you, Daniel. One that I think you'll find interesting." Another pause, deliberate, theatrical. but it requires discretion. Complete discretion. Can I count on that? Every instinct I had, every lesson I'd learned in 7 years of corporate strategy, every warning my father had ever given me about deals that sound too good to be true, told me to say no, to thank him politely and hang up, to lick my wounds and update my resume and find another job like a normal person. But I wasn't feeling normal. I was feeling raw and angry and so goddamn tired of doing the right thing, only to get destroyed anyway. "I'm listening," I said. "Not on the phone. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll send you an address." He paused. "Come alone. Tell no one, especially not your wife." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was insane. This was how people got involved in things they couldn't walk away from, deals that looked golden and turned out to be poison. But what did I have to lose? My job was gone. My marriage was a shell. My dignity had been shredded in a conference room in front of 8 witnesses. What was left to protect? I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my mind churning through possibilities and impossibilities, through anger and humiliation and a strange electric anticipation that I couldn't name. Victoria came home sometime after midnight. I heard the garage door open, her heels clicking across the kitchen tile, the refrigerator opening and closing. She moved through the house like a burglar, quiet and careful, and she didn't come to the bedroom. She slept in the guest room. Or maybe she didn't sleep at all. Maybe she lay awake on the other side of the house, thinking about what she'd done, wondering if she'd made the right choice. Or maybe she slept perfectly well, unburdened by guilt, relieved to have finally cut the dead weight. I didn't know which possibility hurt more. At 7 a.m., I got up and showered. Dressed in one of my good suits, navy Armani, crisp white shirt, no tie. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a man who was trying very hard to appear in control. The effect was almost convincing. Victoria was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, dressed for the office in a gray sheath dress, her hair pulled back, her makeup flawless. She looked up from her phone when I entered, and for a moment, just a heartbeat, something like surprise crossed her face. "You're up early," she said. "Couldn't sleep." I poured coffee into a travel mug, even though my hands were shaking and the last thing I needed was more caffeine. "You?" "I had some things to prepare for the board meeting today." She set her phone down, and I noticed she was gripping it too tightly, her knuckles white. "Daniel, about yesterday." "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Please, I can't." "Not right now." She nodded slowly. "Okay. But we need to talk. Soon." "Do we?" I turned to face her fully, and I saw her flinch. Good. Let her flinch. "Because it seems like you already said everything that mattered. In front of 8 people. With your secretary sitting there smiling." "He's not..." She stopped herself, pressed her lips together. "Damien is qualified for the position." "Is he qualified or is he just convenient?" The question hung between us, sharp and dangerous. Victoria's jaw tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm wondering when this decision was really made. It means I'm wondering how long you've been planning to get rid of me." I picked up my coffee, my keys. "It means I'm wondering if I ever really knew you at all." I walked out before she could answer, before she could see that my eyes were burning and my throat was tight, and I was about 5 seconds away from breaking entirely. The morning air was cool and crisp, the kind of perfect autumn day that makes you believe the world is beautiful even when your life is falling apart. I got in my car and pulled out my phone. The text from Richard Castellano had arrived at 6:47 a.m., 8:47, Riverside Drive, Penthouse 3. Ask for me at the desk. I knew the building. Of course I did. It was one of those old money high-rises overlooking the water, the kind of place where apartments sold for $20 million, and everyone had old family names and trust funds that could buy small countries. The drive took 30 minutes through downtown traffic. I spent it trying not to think, trying not to feel, trying to exist in a numb space where yesterday hadn't happened and tomorrow didn't matter. It didn't work. The building's lobby was all Art Deco elegance and hushed luxury, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a doorman who looked like he'd stepped out of a 1940s film. He greeted me with the kind of professional warmth that the ultra-rich inspire, asked my name, made a discreet phone call, and directed me to the private elevator. "Penthouse 3, he said, handing me a key card. "Mr. Castellano is expecting you." The elevator was so smooth I barely felt it move. Classical music played softly. Vivaldi, I thought, though I'd never been good with composers. The numbers climbed, 10, 20, 30, and finally stopped at P3. The doors opened directly into an apartment that made my house look like a college dorm. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering a panoramic view of the city and the river beyond. The furniture was mid-century modern, understated but clearly worth a fortune. Original art hung on the walls, and I mean original, the kind you see in museums, not the kind you buy at gallery openings to look cultured. A Steinway grand piano sat in one corner, sheet music open as if someone had just been playing. Richard Castellano stood by the windows, silhouetted against the morning light, a coffee cup in his hand. "Daniel," he said, turning. "Thank you for coming. Coffee?" "I'm fine." I stepped into the apartment, and the elevator doors closed behind me with a whisper. "Nice place." "It serves." He gestured to a leather sofa. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." I sat. He settled into a chair across from me, crossed his legs, and studied me with the kind of attention that made me feel like a specimen under glass. "Let me be direct," he said. "I know what happened to you yesterday. I know why it happened. And I know that you're angry. You don't know anything about... Your wife has been having an affair with Damien Ashford for 4 months." He said it calmly, clinically, the way you'd comment on the weather. "It started at the leadership retreat in Napa. They've been discreet, but not discreet enough. Not from someone who knows where to look." The world tilted. My vision tunneled. I heard myself say, "That's not possible," but my voice sounded very far away. "I have photographs," Richard continued. "Hotel receipts, text message records, Damien's calendar cross-referenced with your wife's, showing over 60 meetings that weren't on any official company schedule." He leaned forward. "Daniel, I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because you need to understand what you're up against." 4 months. While I'd been working 16-hour days to hit our quarterly targets. While I'd been presenting to investors, strategizing with department heads, building the future of a company that I thought was ours. She'd been fucking him. "Why?" The word scraped out of my throat. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you." Richard set down his coffee cup. "And because I think you need what I'm offering." "Which is?" "Revenge." He smiled. The sophisticated kind. The kind that doesn't just hurt them, it destroys them. The kind that takes everything they have and leaves them with nothing but the understanding of exactly how badly they miscalculated. I should have been horrified. Should have walked out. Should have maintained some shred of moral high ground. Instead, I leaned forward. "I'm listening." Richard's smile widened. "Good. Here's what I know about Meridian Tech that your wife doesn't think anyone knows." And for the next hour, he laid out a plan so comprehensive, so brilliantly ruthless, so perfectly calibrated to hit Victoria and Damien where they lived, that by the time he finished, I was smiling too. Not a happy smile, not a kind smile, a smile that tasted like vindication and felt like lightning. "So," Richard said finally, "are you in?" I thought about Victoria's flat voice in the conference room, Damien's smirk, the 8 witnesses to my humiliation, the empty house, the guest room where my wife had slept to avoid facing what she'd done. I thought about 4 months of lies, and I thought about justice. "I'm in," I said. Richard extended his hand. Then let's begin. Richard stood and walked to a bookshelf that lined the eastern wall of his penthouse. His fingers traced the spines of what looked like first editions, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Vonnegut, before stopping at what appeared to be a hollowed-out copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. He pulled it free, and I almost laughed at the irony. Of course, that's where he'd hide it. Inside wasn't a flask or cash or any of the cliché things people hide in fake books. It was a thin tablet, sleek and unmarked, the kind of device that screamed custom-built and encrypted beyond government capacity. He powered it on and returned to his seat, the screen's glow reflecting in his eyes. "What I'm about to show you," Richard said, his voice taking on a weight it hadn't held before, "is the result of 3 weeks of research. I've had people, very talented, very discreet people, looking into every aspect of Meridian Tech's operations. What they found is illuminating." 3 weeks? I interrupted. "You've been investigating my company for 3 weeks? Why?" "Because I was considering investing." He tilted the tablet so I could see the screen, financial statements, emails, organizational charts. "I do thorough due diligence, Daniel. Always. And what I discovered made me pull my offer immediately. It also made me wait for the right moment to approach you." Yesterday was the right moment. Yesterday was the inevitable moment. He swiped through several screens. "Your wife has been planning this for approximately 6 weeks. The decision to terminate you wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated. She needed you out of the way for what comes next." My stomach twisted. "What comes next?" Richard turned the tablet fully toward me. On screen was an email thread between Victoria and someone named Marcus Way, a name I vaguely recognized from our investor roster. The subject line read, "Re-acquisition terms. Confidential." I scanned the messages, my trained eye catching key phrases. Simplified leadership structure, reduced redundancies, premium valuation contingent on streamlined C-suite, and then, buried in the 4th email down, Daniel's severance will be complete before closing. No complications. "She's selling the company," I said slowly, the pieces assembling in my mind like shrapnel. "She's selling Meridian." "Not quite. She's selling her shares, all of them. 62% ownership, which gives the buyer controlling interest." Richard pulled the tablet back. "Marcus Way represents a consortium of Chinese investors looking to acquire American tech companies with strong IP portfolios. Meridian's proprietary algorithms, the ones you developed for predictive analytics, are worth approximately $400 million on the open market. Maybe more. $400 million. For work I'd done, for systems I'd built, for innovations that had my fingerprints all over them. The deal is structured to close in 45 days, Richard continued. Victoria walks away with $240 million, give or take. The new ownership dissolves most of the current leadership, except for a few key positions that they're contractually obligated to retain for 12 months. "Let me guess," I said, bitterness coating every word. "Damian Ashford is one of those positions. Chief Strategy Officer, guaranteed 2-year contract, $8 million in retention bonuses." Richard's expression was sympathetic but unyielding. "He gets rich, she gets rich, and you get 6 months severance and a polite reference." I stood up because sitting felt impossible. My legs carried me to the windows, and I stared out at the city below. All those buildings, all those people, all those lives proceeding normally while mine detonated. The river beyond glittered in the morning sun, beautiful and indifferent. "She planned this," I said to my reflection in the glass. "The affair, the termination, the sale. It was all coordinated." "Yes." "How long have you known?" "I suspected after my first week of due diligence. I confirmed it 10 days ago." Richard appeared beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. "I've seen this pattern before, Daniel. Someone builds something valuable with a partner, then decides the partner has become inconvenient, dead weight, an obstacle to the next level of wealth. So they just erase them? They justify it. They tell themselves stories about how the business has evolved, how they need different skills, how it's not personal, it's just business. He paused. They're always wrong. It's always personal. I turned to face him. You said you need me. For what? To stop this deal, to expose what they've done, and to take back what's yours. Richard's eyes held mine. But more than that, to build something better. Something that will make Meridian Tech look like a footnote in your career instead of the peak. I don't understand. If you're not investing in Meridian, why do you care what happens to it? Because I'm investing in you. He said it simply, as if it were obvious. I've built 7 companies from scratch and acquired 34 more. I've made billions identifying talent and backing it properly. And Daniel, you have something rare. You have the ability to see patterns others miss, to synthesize information into strategy, to build systems that scale. I saw it in your work at Meridian. I saw it in the white papers you published. I saw it in the way you turned a struggling analytics division into the company's primary revenue driver. That was years ago. Talent doesn't expire. It just gets wasted or cultivated. He gestured back to the seating area. Sit. Let me show you what I'm proposing. We returned to our positions, and Richard pulled up a new set of documents on his tablet. First, we stopped the acquisition, he said. The deal has several vulnerabilities. The buyers are relying on specific representations about Meridian's IP ownership, representations that aren't entirely accurate. What do you mean? Those algorithms you built, the ones worth $400 million. According to your original employment contract, you retain co-ownership of any IP you developed before Meridian was formally incorporated. He pulled up a PDF, my contract from 9 years ago, signed when the company was just Victoria and me and a dream. Section 7, subsection C, you never assigned those rights, you licensed them. I'd forgotten about that clause. We'd used a template contract from LegalZoom, back when we couldn't afford a real lawyer, and I'd insisted on retaining some ownership of my pre-existing work because I'd spent 3 years developing the core algorithms in graduate school. Victoria had agreed. We were partners then. We were in love. It hadn't seemed important. If the buyers discover that Victoria doesn't have full ownership of the core technology, Richard continued, the deal collapses, or at minimum, the valuation drops by 60%. Suddenly, her $240 million payday becomes $90 million. Still substantial, but not the transformative wealth she's expecting. And Damien? His retention package is contingent on the deal closing at or above the current valuation. If it drops, his contract gets renegotiated downward, probably cut in half. I felt something cold and satisfying settle in my chest. So we threatened to expose the IP issue unless they... What? Give me my job back? No. Richard's smile was sharp. We don't threaten anything. We let them proceed with the deal, let them get right to the finish line, and then we detonate the truth at the worst possible moment. 24 hours before closing, we file a formal claim asserting your IP rights. The buyers walk away. The deal dies. And Victoria is left explaining to the board why she didn't disclose a massive title defect. She'd be ruined. She'd be exposed. There's a difference. Richard leaned back. But that's just the beginning. While they're scrambling to salvage the acquisition, you and I launch a competing company. We hire away Meridian's top talent, and trust me, they'll jump ship once word spreads about Victoria's attempted sale and your IP claim. We take your algorithms, the ones you actually own, and we build something better, faster, leaner. That would take months, years. It would take 6 weeks with the right team and the right funding. He pulled up another document, a term sheet with his signature already on it. I'm prepared to invest $50 million in seed capital. You provide the IP and the vision. We split equity 60-40 in your favor. I stared at the numbers. 50 million. Equity majority. A chance to build something new, something mine, something that Victoria couldn't touch. Why 60-40? I asked. You're putting up all the money. Because I'm betting on you, not just your technology. And I've learned that founders perform better when they have real ownership. 40% of something extraordinary is worth more than 60% of something mediocre. It was a good answer, maybe too good. What's the catch? I said. There's always a catch. Richard regarded me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. The catch is that you have to be willing to burn it all down. Your marriage, your reputation at Meridian, your relationship with people who still work there. Some of them will think you're vindictive. Some will think you're unstable. Victoria will paint you as the villain, the bitter ex-husband who couldn't accept that the business outgrew him. Let her. I need you to understand what you're signing up for. This isn't a clean break. This is war. Corporate war, yes, but war nonetheless. And in war, there are casualties. I thought about Victoria sleeping in the guest room, about 4 months of lies, about sitting in that conference room while she erased me, without flinching. I understand, I said. Do you? Richard set the tablet aside. Because once we start this, there's no stopping, no changing your mind, no reconciliation with your wife. You'll have to look her in the eye and watch everything she built crumble, knowing you're the one holding the match. She looked me in the eye yesterday and destroyed my career, I said quietly. She did it for money and for him. So yes, Richard, I understand exactly what I'm signing up for. He studied my face, searching for doubt, for hesitation, for weakness. He wouldn't find any. That part of me, the part that believed in fairness and second chances and the basic decency of people you loved, had died in a conference room yesterday. What was left was clarity. All right then. Richard stood and offered his hand again. We have 44 days until the acquisition closes. That's our timeline. We file the IP claim on day 43 and we launch the new company on day 45. In between, we execute the following. For the next 90 minutes, he walked me through the plan in exhaustive detail, the legal strategy, the talent acquisition targets, the technology build-out, the PR campaign, every move choreographed, every contingency planned, every piece positioned on a chessboard I was only beginning to see. By the time he finished, my head was spinning and my heart was racing and I felt more alive than I had in months, maybe years. One more thing, Richard said as I prepared to leave. You can't tell anyone about this. Not your brother, not your friends, and especially not Victoria. As far as she knows, you're the wounded ex-employee. Sad, defeated, looking for a new job. I can do that. Can you? Because she knows you, Daniel. She knows your tells. You'll be living with her, seeing her every day, watching her prepare for a deal that you're going to destroy. Can you smile and nod and pretend you're fine while you're planning her downfall? I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I smiled, the same cold smile I'd worn when I agreed to this. Watch me, I said. Richard's answering smile was proud, almost fatherly. I think, he said, this is going to be the beginning of a very profitable friendship. The first rule of deception is belief. You have to believe your own lie before anyone else will. You have to inhabit it so completely that it becomes indistinguishable from truth, wear it like a second skin until even you forget where the performance ends and reality begins. I'd learned this in business. Every pitch to investors, every negotiation with clients, every presentation to the board required a certain amount of theater. You projected confidence even when the numbers were shaky. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You shook hands with people you despised and called it networking. This was just another performance, except the stakes were higher, the audience more intimate, and the cost of breaking character was everything. I spent the drive home from Richard's penthouse rehearsing my role. Defeated husband, wounded professional, man in crisis, uncertain of his next move. I practiced the slump of my shoulders, the exhaustion in my voice, the way I'd avoid eye contact just a beat too long. I needed Victoria to see what she expected to see. Someone she'd broken. Someone who wasn't a threat. The house was still empty when I arrived, but her car was in the garage, which meant she'd come home during the day and left again. I found evidence of her presence in small ways. A coffee cup in the sink, her laptop bag missing from the hook where she usually kept it, the faint scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same fragrance she'd worn since college, lingering in the hallway. I wondered if Damien liked that perfume, if he'd buried his face in her neck and breathed it in, if they'd laughed about me while she wore it. Stop. Don't think about that. Not yet. I went to my office, the one room in this house that was still mine, still felt like territory I controlled, and closed the door, opened my laptop, started building the foundation of my new life. First, I needed to understand exactly what IPIRI owned. Richard's team had done preliminary research, but I needed specifics. I pulled up every employment contract, every agreement, every document I'd signed in the past 9 years. The original contract was there, just as Richard had said, with Section 7, subsection C, stating clearly that any intellectual property I'd developed prior to Meridian's incorporation remained my property, licensed to the company but not owned by it. The algorithms I'd built in graduate school, the predictive analytics framework that had become Meridian's core technology, fell squarely into that category. I'd started developing them 3 years before the company existed, published 2 academic papers on the methodology, and only later adapted them for commercial use. Victoria knew this. She'd known it 9 years ago when we signed the contract. She'd either forgotten, or she'd assumed it wouldn't matter, or, and this seemed most likely, she'd planned to deal with it after the acquisition closed, probably by offering me a settlement that I'd be too grateful to question. The thought made me smile. That smile again, the one that didn't feel entirely like mine. I spent the next 2 hours documenting everything. Screenshots of contracts, copies of my academic papers, records of every email where I had discussed the technology's development. I created a folder labeled Archive Old Projects and buried it 3 levels deep in my file system. Innocuous and invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Then I opened LinkedIn and updated my profile, open to new opportunities, seeking strategic leadership roles in tech. The kind of thing a recently unemployed executive would do. The kind of thing that would make Victoria feel secure that I was moving on, accepting my fate, not plotting anything that might interfere with her plans. Within 20 minutes, the messages started coming in. Recruiters, former colleagues, well-meaning acquaintances offering sympathy and connections. I responded to each one with carefully calibrated gratitude and vague optimism. Thank you so much. I appreciate you thinking of me. Yes, let's definitely catch up soon. All the while, I was thinking about Richard's timeline, 44 days, just over 6 weeks to build a company from nothing, to poach Meridian's best talent, to prepare for a legal battle that would expose Victoria's deception and torpedo her acquisition. 6 weeks to destroy the woman I'd loved for 12 years. My phone buzzed. Victoria, home by 8. We should talk. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. What would defeated Daniel say? Not angry Daniel, not vengeful Daniel, but the version of me she expected to see. I typed, "Okay, I'll be here." Simple, resigned, no fight in it. She responded with a thumbs-up emoji, which somehow felt worse than any words could have. She arrived at 8:17, which meant she was exactly as late as she wanted to be, enough to establish that her time was more valuable, not so much that it seemed deliberately disrespectful. I'd seen her use this tactic in negotiations. I'd never thought she'd use it on me. I was in the kitchen when I heard her heels on the marble floor. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt, poured myself a bourbon I had no intention of drinking, and positioned myself at the island, with my laptop open to job listings, the picture of a man trying to move forward. "Hey," she said from the doorway. I looked up. She'd changed too, out of her work armor and into yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, her hair down, her face scrubbed clean of makeup. This was supposed to be intimate Victoria, vulnerable Victoria, the version of her that existed only in private moments. I wondered if Damien got to see this version. Probably. "Hey," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. She moved into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of wine, leaned against the counter across from me. The island between us felt symbolic, a barrier we'd both chosen to maintain. "How are you doing?" she asked. "How do you think?" "Daniel, I'm fine," I interrupted, softening my tone. "Sorry, I'm processing. It's been a lot." She nodded, took a sip of wine. "I know yesterday was difficult. The way it happened, it wasn't ideal. Wasn't ideal." I let out a hollow laugh. That's one way to describe being fired by your wife in front of the board. "You weren't fired. You were terminated. Right. Much better." I closed my laptop, met her eyes. "Why, Vic? Just tell me why." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her wine glass. When she spoke, her voice was careful, rehearsed. "The company is changing. We're scaling in ways we never anticipated. The board felt that we needed different leadership for this next phase." "The board felt that, or you felt that?" "It was a collective decision. But you're the CEO. You have controlling interest. If you'd fought for me..." I let the sentence hang, watched her face. A flicker of something, guilt, regret, crossed her features, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I didn't fight because I agreed with the decision," she said finally. "Daniel, you're brilliant at what you do. You built our strategy division into something incredible, but we're moving into acquisition territory now, into markets that require different expertise. Damien has experience in..." "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't tell me about Damien's qualifications. Don't insult me by pretending this was purely professional." Her jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? This was the moment. The edge of the cliff. I could push forward, confront her about the affair, let my anger spill out and blow everything Richard and I had planned. Or I could pull back, stay in character, let her think she'd won. I took a breath, ran my hand through my hair, looked away. "Nothing. Forget it. I'm angry and I'm hurt, and I'm taking it out on you." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "I understand. You have every right to be upset." "Do I get to know what comes next? For me, I mean, with the severance, the transition. Linda will have everything ready on Monday. 6 months salary, full benefits, stock options vested. And I'll make sure you get strong recommendations. You won't have any trouble finding..." "I don't want another job, Victoria. I want to understand what happened to us." I looked at her directly, let her see something ill in my eyes. Not the truth, but close enough to pass. "When did we stop being partners?" She looked away first, studying her wine like it held answers. "I don't know. Somewhere along the way. Maybe we just grew in different directions. Or maybe you grew toward someone else." Her eyes snapped back to mine, wide, startled. "What?" I shrugged, aiming for casual, landing somewhere near broken. "I'm not stupid, Vic. I see how he looks at you, how you look at him. Daniel, Damien is my executive assistant. Chief of staff," I corrected. He hates being called an assistant. "This isn't about him, isn't it?" I stood up, carried my untouched bourbon to the sink, poured it out, gave her my back, let my shoulders slump. "I don't want to fight. I don't have the energy for it. I just want to know if there's anything left of us worth saving, or if I should start looking for an apartment." The silence stretched so long, I thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was quiet, almost sad. I think we need some space. Time to figure out what we both want. Translation: I want you gone, but I need to seem reasonable. I need to be the good guy in this story. Okay, I said. I can stay in the guest room for now. Give us both time to think. That's probably best. I turned around, looked at her across the kitchen that we'd designed together, in the house we'd bought together, and felt nothing. Not love, not hate, not even the anger that had burned so hot this morning. Just cold calculation. For what it's worth, I said, I'm sorry it ended like this. She nodded, her eyes glistening with what might have been tears or might have been relief. Me too. She left the kitchen first, retreating upstairs to our bedroom, her bedroom now. I waited until I heard the door close, then pulled out my phone and texted Richard. Performance successful. She suspects nothing. His response came immediately. Good. Tomorrow we start building. Sleep well, Daniel. You're going to need it. I didn't sleep well. I didn't sleep at all. I lay in the guest room bed, firm mattress, neutral gray sheets, the impersonal comfort of a hotel, and stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning through everything Richard had told me, everything Victoria had said, everything I was about to do. Somewhere in the house, my wife was sleeping, maybe dreaming, maybe thinking about Damien, about their future together once I was gone, and the acquisition was complete, and they were both rich beyond measure. Did she feel guilty? Did she tell herself stories to justify what she'd done? Did she believe her own lies? Or did she sleep peacefully, unburdened by conscience, secure in the knowledge that she'd made the smart business decision? I would never know. And somewhere over the past few hours, I'd realized I didn't care. The woman I'd loved, the brilliant, ambitious, passionate woman I'd met in graduate school, the partner who'd stayed up until dawn with me, sketching business plans on napkins, the wife who'd cried at our wedding. That woman was gone. If she'd ever really existed at all. What remained was Victoria Chen, CEO, and she'd made her choice. Now I would make mine. At 3 a.m., unable to lie still any longer, I went to my office and started working. If Richard was going to invest $50 million in our venture, I needed to give him something worth investing in. I pulled up the old code from my graduate work, the original algorithms that had been refined and expanded into Meridian's platform. Looking at it now, I could see all the ways it had been constrained by Victoria's vision, shaped to fit Meridian's specific use cases, optimized for markets I'd never cared about. But the core was still there, still mine, and it was better than I remembered. What if I stripped away all the corporate modifications? What if I went back to the original concept and pushed it in a completely different direction? The ideas came faster than I could type. New applications, new markets, new possibilities that Meridian had never explored because Victoria had been too conservative, too focused on proven revenue streams. By the time the sun rose, I had the skeleton of something new, something better, something that would make Meridian Tech look like a rough draft. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m. Richard, calling. You're up early, I said. So are you. I can hear it in your voice. You've been working. He sounded pleased. Good. I'm sending over some people today. My technical architect, my talent acquisition lead, and my lawyer. They'll need to meet with you separately. Can you be available? Victoria thinks I'm job hunting and feeling sorry for myself. I can be wherever you need me. Excellent. There's a private office space I keep in the financial district. 22nd floor, corner suite. Very discreet. He gave me the address. Be there at 10 a.m. And Daniel? Yes? Bring everything. Every contract, every email, every piece of documentation related to your IP. We're going to need it all. I'm already packed. He laughed, a warm sound full of approval. I knew I made the right bet on you. See you at 10. The line went dead, and I sat there in my office, in my house, in the life I was about to systematically dismantle, and felt that cold smile return. Let the games begin. The office space Richard maintained in the financial district was the kind of place that didn't officially exist. No company name on the directory, no receptionist, just a sleek black door with a keypad and a discreet brass number, 2247. He'd texted me the code at 9:47 a.m., and when I punched it in, the door clicked open to reveal something that looked less like an office and more like a war room. Floor-to-ceiling whiteboards covered 2 walls, already filled with diagrams and timelines and organizational charts in different colored markers. A massive conference table dominated the center of the space, its surface buried under laptops, legal pads, and what looked like architectural drawings. 3 people stood around it, deep in conversation, and they all looked up when I entered. Daniel. Richard emerged from a side office I hadn't noticed, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. Right on time. Let me introduce you to the team. The first person he gestured to was a woman in her late 30s, Asian, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and an air of compressed efficiency that reminded me of a coiled spring. Dr. Sarah Chen, my chief technical architect. MIT, 2 PhDs, computer science and applied mathematics. And the best systems designer I've ever worked with. Sarah extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional. Mr. Morrison, I've read your academic papers. The predictive modeling framework you developed is elegant work. Thank you. Though that was a long time ago. Good ideas don't expire, she said. They just wait for the right application. The second person was a man who looked like he'd walked off a college campus, early 30s, dressed in jeans and a button-down with the sleeves rolled up, an energy drink in one hand and his phone in the other. Tyler Rodriguez, Richard said, head of talent acquisition, former Google recruiter, poached half of Amazon's AI team for my last venture. Half is generous, Tyler said, with a grin shaking my hand. It was more like a third, but I make up for it in enthusiasm. The third person made my chest tighten. She was probably 50, dressed in a severe black suit, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, and she carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen more courtrooms than most judges. Margaret Winters, Richard said, partner at Winters & Holt, specializing in IP law and corporate litigation. Mr. Morrison. Her voice was clipped, precise. I understand we have some interesting contractual issues to discuss. That's one way to put it, I said. Richard gestured to the conference table. Shall we? We sat, and I pulled out my laptop, loading up the folder I'd prepared last night. Sarah immediately leaned forward, her eyes tracking across my screen. Tyler was texting rapidly, barely paying attention. Margaret produced a legal pad and a fountain pen that probably cost more than my watch. Let's start with the fundamentals, Richard said. Daniel, walk us through exactly what IP you own versus what Meridian owns. I took a breath and began. I explained the algorithms I'd developed in graduate school, the academic papers I'd published, the initial prototype I'd built before Meridian even existed. I showed them the employment contract with its critical clause about pre-existing IP. I demonstrated how the current Meridian platform was built on top of my original work, expanded and refined, but fundamentally derivative. Sarah interrupted me twice with technical questions that went deep into the code architecture. Margaret made notes in what looked like her own form of shorthand. Tyler kept texting, but I noticed he was also recording the conversation on his phone. So legally, Margaret said when I finished, you own the foundational algorithms, and Meridian has a perpetual license to use them, but not to transfer them without your consent. Correct. And your wife's acquisition deal with the Chinese consortium would transfer all of Meridian's IP to the buyers, including technology they don't actually own. I pulled up the acquisition agreement that Richard's team had somehow obtained. Section 12, Representations and Warranties. Victoria is certifying that Meridian has full, unencumbered ownership of all proprietary technology. That's a material misrepresentation. Margaret's smile was razor thin. which gives us multiple angles of attack. We can file an injunction blocking the sale. We can demand renegotiation of the purchase price. Or, and this is what I'd recommend, we can let them proceed almost to closing, then drop this in their lap like a bomb. The chaos alone would be delicious. I like the way you think, Richard said. But that's just defense, Sarah interjected, looking up from her own laptop where she'd been reviewing my code. What about offense? What are we actually building? This was the question I'd been waiting for. I stood up and walked to one of the whiteboards, grabbed a marker. Meridian's platform is designed for corporate clients, I said, sketching as I talked. Fortune 500 companies using our analytics for market forecasting, risk assessment, resource optimization. That was Victoria's vision. Big contracts, high margins, enterprise sales. Slow, conservative, boring, Tyler added. Exactly, but the underlying technology can do so much more. I drew a new diagram. What if instead of selling to corporations, we build a platform that empowers individual creators, small businesses, independent researchers, anyone who needs sophisticated predictive analytics but can't afford enterprise pricing? Sarah was already nodding. Democratization, like how AWS disrupted traditional hosting, or how Stripe disrupted payment processing. Right. We take the core algorithms, rebuild them as a cloud-native service, price it at 5% of what Meridian charges, and scale through volume instead of margin. I was drawing faster now. The idea's flowing. We call it something like Foresight, or Augur, or Orion, Richard said quietly, after the hunter, the constellation that guides navigation. I turned the name over in my mind. Orion. Yes. Orion, I repeated. We launch with 3 tiers, free for basic use, pro for power users, enterprise for anyone who needs custom implementation. We undercut Meridian on price, exceed them on capability, and blow them out of the water on user experience. Tyler was grinning now. Oh, this is good. This is really good. How fast can we build it? Sarah had pulled up something on her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. If we use a microservices architecture, leverage existing cloud infrastructure, and yes, I can have a working prototype in 3 weeks, maybe less if I bring in my team. Your team is still under contract with, Richard started. They'll break contract for this. Sarah's eyes were bright. Trust me. Half of them are bored out of their minds at their current gigs. They'll jump at the chance to build something that actually matters. Which brings us to talent acquisition, Richard said, turning to Tyler. Who do we need from Meridian? Tyler consulted his phone. I've been doing preliminary research based on LinkedIn profiles and the org chart Daniel provided. There are approximately 15 people at Meridian who are genuinely exceptional, the kind of talent that's hard to replace. Another 30 who are very good but not critical. If we can poach the top 15, Meridian's capabilities drop by about 60% overnight. Can we get them? I asked. Can we? Brother, most of them are already halfway out the door. Tyler pulled up a spreadsheet. Morale at Meridian has been tanking for the past year. Victoria's been so focused on the acquisition that she's ignored retention. People are overworked, underpaid, and increasingly aware that they're expendable. All we have to do is offer them something better, which is equity, real equity, not options that might be worth something someday. We give the top 15 people actual ownership in Orion, 0.5 to 2% each, depending on seniority and role. Suddenly, they're not just employees, they're partners. I did the math in my head. That's nearly 20% of the company. Better 20% of something revolutionary than 100% of something mediocre, Richard said. Besides, I'm putting in $50 million. Dilution is a small price to pay for the best team in the industry. Margaret cleared her throat. All of this assumes Meridian doesn't sue us for poaching and trade secret theft, which they absolutely will. Let them, Richard said. We'll be careful about what information transfers. No proprietary code, no client lists, no strategic documents. Just people and their expertise. That's not theft. That's free market capitalism. It's also a knife fight, Margaret warned. Your wife will come at you with everything she has, Daniel. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Victoria's face in the conference room, her flat voice. 4 months of lies. Yes, I said. Good, because I'll need you to sign approximately 40 documents before we proceed. Non-competes, IP assignments, indemnification agreements. We need to make this bulletproof. She opened her briefcase and started pulling out contracts. Actual physical paper, the old-fashioned kind, because some things were too important to exist only in the digital realm. For the next 2 hours, we went through every document. Margaret explained each clause, each protection, each potential liability. I signed my name so many times it started to look like someone else's handwriting. When we finished, Richard stood and walked to the windows. The city spread out below us, oblivious to what we were planning in this unmarked office. We have 6 weeks, he said. Sarah, you have 3 weeks to build a working prototype. Tyler, you have 4 weeks to recruit the team. Start with Meridian's top talent, but cast a wider net. We want the best people in the industry, regardless of where they're currently working. Margaret, you prepare the legal filings, but don't submit anything until I give the word. We need to time this perfectly. He turned back to face us, his expression serious. This isn't just about building a company. This isn't even just about revenge. Though I won't pretend that's not part of it. This is about proving something. About showing that loyalty matters, that talent matters, that you can't just discard people who built your success and expect no consequences. Hear, hear, Tyler said. Richard looked at me. Daniel, you're going to need to maintain your cover. Keep applying for jobs. Keep acting defeated. Can you do that while also building Orion? I'll make it work. It's going to mean long hours, secret meetings, lying to your wife every single day. She lied to me for 4 months. I said, I think I can manage. Sarah stood, started packing her laptop. I should get us started. I'll need access to the original source code for the algorithms. Can you get me that? It's all on my personal drives. I'll send you everything tonight. Perfect. I'll start assembling my team. Expect some mysterious LinkedIn connection requests from people you've never heard of. That's my crew, vetting you. Tyler was already halfway to the door. I'm going to start making calls. Daniel, I'll need you to provide warm introductions to your former colleagues. Nothing obvious, just casual, hey, how are you doing check-ins. Can you do that without raising suspicion? Yes. People have been reaching out anyway. It'll seem natural. Excellent. This is going to be fun. He practically bounced out of the office. Margaret gathered her documents with methodical precision. Mr. Morrison, expect a call from me in 48 hours. I'll have additional questions about the IP situation. In the meantime, don't discuss any of this with anyone. Not friends, not family, and especially not your wife. Understood. She left, and then it was just Richard and me in the office that didn't exist, surrounded by whiteboards, full of plans and possibilities. How do you feel? He asked. I considered the question. 24 hours ago, I'd been fired. Humiliated. My marriage was over, my career was in ruins, and I'd felt like I was drowning. Now I was building something new, something mine, something that would prove exactly what Victoria had thrown away. Like I just declared war, I said. Richard smiled. Good, because that's exactly what you did. And Daniel, he extended his hand one more time. Welcome to Orion. I shook his hand, and through the window behind him, I could see Meridian's building in the distance, its logo glinting in the afternoon sun. For now, it stood tall, confident, unaware. But in 6 weeks, I was going to bring it to its knees, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. There's a peculiar kind of exhaustion that comes from living 2 lives simultaneously. Not the physical tiredness of long hours, though there was plenty of that, but the mental strain of maintaining separate realities, of being two different people depending on which phone was ringing, which door was opening, which version of yourself the moment required. At home, I was defeated Daniel, the man who spent mornings in his home office half-heartedly applying for jobs, who sighed heavily when Victoria asked how the search was going, who ate dinner in silence and retreated to the guest room early. I shuffled around the house in old sweatpants, let my beard grow out a few days, kept my voice flat and my eyes tired. It wasn't difficult. Half of it wasn't even acting. But the other half of my life, the real half, the part that mattered, was something else entirely. By day 3 of our 6-week countdown, I'd fallen into a rhythm. Mornings were for appearances. I'd sit at my desk with job boards open, occasionally typing applications that I'd never submit, making sure to leave the browser history visible in case Victoria checked. She hadn't yet, but I knew her well enough to know she would eventually. CEOs don't get to the top by trusting people. Around 10 a.m., after Victoria left for the office, I'd close the fake job applications and open my encrypted communication channel with the Orion team. Sarah would send me technical specifications and architecture diagrams. Tyler would forward profiles of people he was targeting for recruitment. Margaret would have legal questions that required increasingly detailed answers about my history at Meridian. And Richard would check in daily, always with the same question: how are you holding up? The answer was complicated. On day 4, Tyler scheduled my first casual coffee with someone from Meridian. Her name was Jennifer Park, senior data scientist, one of the 15 critical talents we'd identified. I'd hired her 3 years ago, straight out of Carnegie Mellon, mentored her through her first major project, and watched her become one of the best analytical minds in the building. We met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from Meridian's office, carefully chosen for its poor acoustics and crowded atmosphere, nowhere anyone could accidentally overhear our conversation. "Daniel," Jennifer stood when she saw me, pulling me into a hug that surprised us both. "God, I'm so sorry about what happened. Everyone's talking about it. It's so unfair." We sat, ordered coffee we didn't need, and made small talk for exactly 7 minutes before she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "Is it true you're looking for a new position?" "Yeah," I said, playing my role. "It's been harder than I expected. Lots of companies want to know why I left Meridian, and my wife fired me doesn't play well in interviews." She winced. "I can't even imagine. But Daniel, you built that strategy division from nothing. Anyone who doesn't see your value is an idiot." "I appreciate that." I paused, let the silence hang for a moment. "How are things there? At Meridian?" Her expression darkened. "Honestly, not great. There are all these rumors about some big acquisition, but nobody's saying anything official. Victoria's been in closed-door meetings constantly, and Damien—" She stopped herself. "It's okay. You can say it." "He's terrible, Daniel. Absolutely terrible. He doesn't understand the work. He makes arbitrary decisions, and he's already pissed off half the department by canceling the project we'd been working on for 8 months. Your project, the one you designed." I felt anger flare in my chest, but kept my expression sympathetic. "Which project?" "The municipal analytics platform." He said it wasn't aligned with the company's strategic direction. She made air quotes around the last 3 words. "Half the team is ready to quit." This was the opening. I could feel it hanging there, waiting for me to grab it. "Can I tell you something in confidence?" I asked. Jennifer nodded immediately. "Of course. I'm not just looking for a new job. I'm building something new, and I'm looking for people who want to be part of it." Her eyes widened. "Like a startup? Like a revolution?" I pulled out my phone, showed her the NDA that Margaret had prepared. "But if I'm going to tell you more, I need you to sign this first." She read it quickly. She was a scientist, used to legal documents, and signed without hesitation. Then I told her about Orion. Not everything, not the revenge aspect or the acquisition sabotage, but enough. The technology, the mission, the equity stake, the chance to build something that mattered. By the time I finished, her coffee was cold and her eyes were bright. "When can I start?" she asked. "We're not launching for 6 weeks, but we need people lined up, ready to jump when we go live. Can you stay at Meridian until then? I know it's asking a lot." "Are you kidding? I'd stay twice as long for a chance to work with you again, to build something real instead of whatever corporate bullshit Damien is pushing." She paused. "Can I tell you something?" "Please." "There are at least 10 other people in the department who feel the same way I do. People who are only staying because they need the paycheck, but who'd leave in a heartbeat for the right opportunity. If you're recruiting, give me their names," I said. She did. And over the next week, I had coffee with 7 of them, lunch with 3 more, a drink after work with another 2. Each conversation followed the same pattern: sympathy about my departure, frustration about Meridian's direction, the NDA, the pitch, the commitment. By day 10, Tyler had 12 of our 15 target recruits locked in. The other 3 were trickier. They were in positions where leaving would be immediately obvious, where their departure would trigger alarm bells. We'd have to wait until the last possible moment to approach them. But 12 was enough to gut Meridian's technical capabilities. 12 was enough to shift the balance of power. At home, Victoria noticed nothing. Or if she did, she was too distracted to care. The acquisition was consuming her, pulling her into an orbit that didn't include me. She left earlier each morning, came home later each night, and when she was home, she was always on her phone or her laptop, always in a meeting, always somewhere else, even when she was sitting 3 feet away. We barely spoke. When we did, it was in polite formalities that wouldn't have been out of place between strangers at a bus stop. "Did you eat?" "Yeah, I grabbed something." "I'll be working late tomorrow." "Okay, I'll probably be out anyway. Coffee with a former colleague." She never asked which colleague, never wondered why I was having so many coffee meetings with people from my past. She was too busy building her future to notice I was building mine. On day 14, Sarah sent me the first working prototype of Orion. I opened it on my laptop at 11 p.m., sitting in the guest room with the door locked, my heart hammering against my ribs. The interface loaded in my browser. Clean, intuitive, beautiful in its simplicity. I entered a test data set, one of the problems I used to run through Meridian's platform as a benchmark. Orion processed it in 8 seconds. Meridian would have taken 45. The predictions it generated were more accurate, the visualization more elegant, the insights more actionable. And this was just the prototype, rough and incomplete. I called Sarah immediately. "Did you test it?" she asked before I could say hello. "I'm looking at it right now. Sarah, this is incredible. This is better than Meridian." "I know. Wait until you see version 2. I'm implementing neural network optimization that should cut processing time by another 60%. "How are you doing this so fast?" "Because I care." Her voice was fierce. "Because I'm not doing this for a paycheck or to impress some board of directors. I'm doing this because it matters. Because you gave me the chance to build something that's actually mine. Well, ours." After we hung up, I sat staring at the screen for a long time. This was real. This was actually happening. In 6 weeks, we were going to launch something that would make Meridian's technology look obsolete. And Victoria had no idea. The thought should have filled me with satisfaction. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness, like I'd won something I no longer wanted. I pushed the feeling away and got back to work. On day 17, I made a mistake. It was small, the kind of error that someone less observant might have missed entirely. But Victoria had built a company from nothing, had survived in a male-dominated industry through sheer intelligence and pattern recognition, and she didn't miss much. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she came downstairs, already dressed for work even though it was barely 6 a.m. She poured herself orange juice and stood by the counter, scrolling through her phone with that distant expression she wore when she was mentally already at the office. My phone, sitting on the island, buzzed with a text. I glanced at it reflexively. Richard, confirming our 2 p.m. meeting, and Victoria looked up at the same moment. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second, and I saw it. A flicker of curiosity, quickly suppressed. "Popular lately," she said casually. "Your phone's been going off a lot." "Job applications," I lied smoothly. "Recruiters follow up at weird hours." She took a sip of juice, still watching me. "How's that going?" "The search?" "Slow. Lots of interest, but nothing concrete." I delivered the line I'd rehearsed, added a touch of frustration to my voice. "Turns out, Chief Strategy Officer at mid-sized tech company doesn't translate as well as I'd hoped. Everyone wants someone with recent enterprise experience, or they want someone younger." "You're 42. That's not old. Tell that to the 28-year-old VPs doing the hiring." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "You'll find something. You're talented, Daniel. Any company would be lucky to have you." The words were right, but her tone was wrong. Distracted. Perfunctory. The kind of thing you say because it's expected, not because you mean it. I should have left it alone. Should have nodded and finished my coffee and maintained the performance. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Do you actually believe that? Or are you just saying what you think you should say?" She looked up, genuinely surprised. "What?" "Nothing. Forget it." I grabbed my coffee mug. "I should let you get to work." "Daniel?" "It's fine, Vic. Really." I walked toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. "I have a question. When you decided to fire me, to bring in Damien, was there ever a moment where you considered what it would do to us? To our marriage?" The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming. "I made a business decision," she said finally. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." I nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." I went upstairs before she could respond, closed myself in the guest room, and leaned against the door with my eyes closed. My hands were shaking. I'd broken character, let real emotion slip through, and that was dangerous. That was the kind of mistake that could make her suspicious, make her start asking questions I couldn't answer. My phone buzzed. "Richard, everything okay? You seemed distracted in your last email." I typed back, "Fine, just tired. See you at 2. But I wasn't fine. I was standing in a house I'd bought with my wife, planning the destruction of the company we'd built together, and pretending to be someone I wasn't sure I'd ever been. How long could I keep this up? How many more weeks of double life exhaustion before I made a mistake I couldn't recover from? The answer came 2 days later, on day 19, when Victoria walked into my office without knocking. I was on a video call with Tyler, reviewing final recruitment numbers, my screen filled with Orion documents and organizational charts. I heard her footsteps in the hallway approximately 2 seconds before she opened the door, which gave me just enough time to minimize everything and pull up a job listing website. But not enough time to end the call. Tyler's voice came through my speakers. "Targeting 3 more from their analytics division, and I think we can get the lead engineer to jump if we offer." I muted it and closed the laptop in one motion, my heart exploding in my chest. Victoria stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't realize you were on a call. I just came to grab my—" She spotted her tablet on my desk, where she must have left it last time she'd been in here. She walked over and picked it up. The silence stretched. My laptop was closed. Tyler was still on the other end, probably confused about why I'd suddenly disconnected. "Important call?" Victoria asked. "Recruiter," I said. My voice sounded almost normal. "Following up on an application." "They called you on video?" "Everyone does video calls now." She nodded slowly, still watching me with that analytical gaze that had intimidated countless investors and competitors. Which company? The question was casual, but it was a test. She was measuring my answer, looking for inconsistencies. Data Core Solutions, I said, pulling the name from a job listing I'd seen earlier. Analytics consulting firm. The role isn't quite right, but the recruiter wanted to discuss it anyway. I know Data Core. Good company. The CEO is friends with... She stopped. Well, anyway, good luck with it. She left, closing the door behind her, and I sat frozen for a full 30 seconds before I dared to open my laptop again. Tyler's face filled the screen, his expression concerned. Dude, what just happened? Close call, I said. Too close. Did she see anything? I don't think so. But Tyler, we need to be more careful. No more video calls when I'm at home. Text or email only. Agreed. That was scary. After he disconnected, I sat in my office and faced a truth I'd been avoiding. This double life was unsustainable. Every day increased the risk of exposure. Every lie built on previous lies, creating a structure that would collapse if Victoria pulled the right thread. We had 3 weeks left until launch. 21 days of maintaining the performance, of pretending to be defeated while building an empire. 21 days to pull off the greatest revenge in corporate history. I just had to hope I could last that long. Day 23 was when everything started to accelerate. I woke up in the guest room to find a text from Richard sent at 5:47 a.m. We have a problem. Come to the office. Now. No explanation, no context, just urgency compressed into 7 words. I dressed quickly, quietly, listening for sounds of Victoria moving around the house. Nothing. Her car was still in the garage, which meant she was either still asleep or working from the bedroom. Either way, I had a window. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Early breakfast meeting with recruiter. Back by noon. And drove to the financial district through dawn-empty streets, my mind running through possibilities. A problem could mean anything. Someone talked. Someone figured it out. Victoria knew. The office door was already unlocked when I arrived. Richard stood at the windows, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. Sarah sat at the conference table, her laptop open, her expression grim. Tyler paced near the whiteboard, running his hands through his hair. Margaret was there too, which was new. She rarely came to the office, preferring to work from her firm's headquarters downtown. Her presence meant this was serious. Richard ended his call and turned to face me. We have a leak. The words hit me like cold water. What kind of leak? Someone's been asking questions about Orion. Discreet questions, but questions nonetheless. He pulled up something on his phone and handed it to me. This is from a contact at a venture capital firm. Someone called yesterday inquiring about a new company called Orion, possibly in the analytics space, possibly connected to former Meridian employees. My stomach dropped. Who is asking? The inquiry came through a third party, but my contact did some digging. The trail leads back to Meridian, specifically to their general counsel's office. Victoria knows, I said. Not necessarily, Margaret interjected. It could be routine due diligence. If she's preparing for acquisition, her lawyers would be monitoring competitive threats, tracking former employees, scanning for anything that might impact the deal. Or, Richard said, someone talked. Someone we recruited. Someone who couldn't keep their mouth shut. Tyler stopped pacing. I'll find out. I'll call every single person we've approached and, carefully, Margaret warned, if you start interrogating people, you'll confirm that there's something to investigate. We need to be smart about this. Sarah had been quiet through the exchange, her fingers flying across her keyboard. Now she looked up. There's another possibility. Someone could have tracked Daniel's digital footprint. If he's been less careful than he thinks about encrypting communications, if he's logged into Orion systems from his home network, if Victoria has any kind of monitoring software on their shared devices. She doesn't, I said. Then, less certainly, I don't think she does. You don't think, or you know. I opened my mouth, closed it. The truth was, I didn't know. Victoria was brilliant at technology, had access to resources I could only guess at, and if she suspected something, she'd absolutely have the capability to investigate. We need to assume the worst, Richard said. We need to assume Victoria knows something, even if she doesn't know everything, which means we accelerate the timeline. Accelerate to when? I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe less. Sarah's eyes widened. That's not enough time. The platform isn't ready for launch. We're still building core features, still testing. Then we launch with what we have. We go live with the beta version, we recruit our team early, and we file the IP claim before Meridian knows what hit them. That's incredibly risky, Margaret said. If we file too early, they have time to respond, time to negotiate, time to build a defense. The whole point was to detonate this at the last possible moment. The whole point was to destroy Victoria's acquisition, Richard corrected. If she already suspects something, if her lawyers are already digging, then we've lost the element of surprise anyway. Better to strike now while we still control the narrative. They argued for the next 20 minutes, voices rising and falling in controlled professional fury. Sarah wanted more time to perfect the technology. Tyler insisted we needed to coordinate the recruitment announcements properly. Margaret kept talking about legal exposure and timing and the difference between a tactical strike and a strategic blunder. I listened to all of it, my mind spinning through scenarios and contingencies, until finally I stood up and walked to the whiteboard. "Stop," I said. They fell silent, all eyes on me. I picked up a marker and drew a timeline. Here's what we know. The acquisition is scheduled to close in 24 days. Victoria's due diligence team started asking about Orion yesterday, which means they're at least 3 days behind us. They know enough to ask questions, but not enough to have answers. I marked another point on the timeline. We have 12 critical recruits locked in, 3 more who are on the fence. If we accelerate the recruitment, we can announce their departure from Meridian in one coordinated wave, say 14 days from now. That's 10 days before the acquisition closes. The chaos alone would be devastating, Tyler said. Exactly. 12 senior people leaving simultaneously, all going to the same competitor. The buyers would demand to know why. They'd start their own investigation. They'd discover the IP issue. Margaret was nodding now. And then we file the formal claim, not before the exodus, but after. When Meridian is already reeling. When Victoria is already scrambling to explain to her buyers why her entire technical team just imploded. She'll know it was you, Sarah said, looking at me. Good. I want her to know. Richard was smiling now, that dangerous smile I'd come to recognize. This could work. This could actually work. But Daniel, you need to understand what you're triggering. Once we execute this, there's no going back. Victoria will come after you with everything she has, legally, professionally, maybe even personally. Let her. She's still your wife. On paper. The words came out harder than I intended. The woman I married died months ago, maybe years ago. What's left is a CEO who made a strategic decision to eliminate an obstacle. I'm just returning the favor. The room was quiet. Even Tyler, who usually had something sarcastic to say, remained silent. All right then, Richard said finally. Sarah, you have 12 days to get Orion to beta-ready status. It doesn't have to be perfect, just functional enough to demonstrate capability. Tyler, coordinate with our recruits. Make sure everyone understands the timeline and the stakes. Margaret, prepare all the legal filings, but don't submit anything until I give the word. He turned to me. And Daniel, you need to maintain cover for 12 more days. Can you do that? Can you go home to your wife and pretend everything is normal while we prepare to destroy everything she's built? I thought about Victoria's face in the conference room. Damien's smirk. 4 months of lies. Yes, I said, maintaining cover for 12 more days turned out to be easier than I expected because Victoria was barely home. The acquisition was entering its critical phase, which meant 16-hour days at the office. Constant conference calls with the buyers, armies of lawyers and accountants crawling through every aspect of Meridian's operations. She'd leave before dawn and return after midnight, sometimes not at all. I'd find evidence of her presence in small ways: a coffee cup in the sink, her car in the garage at odd hours, the smell of her perfume lingering in the hallway. But we rarely saw each other. We existed in parallel timelines that occasionally intersected but never quite touched. On day 26, I saw Damien. It was unintentional. I'd gone to pick up dry cleaning from a place 2 blocks from Meridian's office. Stupid, risky, but I'd needed the suit for a meeting with potential investors that Richard had arranged. I was walking back to my car when I saw him emerge from a restaurant across the street. He wasn't alone. Victoria was with him. They stood on the sidewalk in what looked like an intense conversation, her hand on his arm, his head bent close to hers. The body language was intimate, familiar, the kind of unconscious closeness that comes from spending hours together, from knowing someone's rhythms and patterns. I watched from across the street, hidden behind a delivery truck, and felt nothing. No rage, no heartbreak, no surprise. Just a cold, clinical observation. They looked like a couple. They moved like people who'd already made their choice, who were just waiting for the paperwork to catch up with reality. Victoria's phone rang. She answered it, said something to Damien, and walked back inside the restaurant. Damien stayed on the sidewalk, checking his own phone, smiling at something on the screen. I could have crossed the street, could have confronted him, could have let him know exactly what was coming his way in less than 2 weeks. Instead, I took a photo with my phone, just their body language, their proximity, the way he watched her walk away, and sent it to Margaret with a single word: evidence. Her response came immediately: noted, stay focused. I got in my car and drove to the office that didn't exist, where Richard was waiting with updates on our progress. Recruitment is locked, Tyler reported. All 12 of our primary targets plus 2 of the 3 fence sitters. They're ready to submit resignation letters on the same day, same time, 9 a.m., 12 days from now. Platform status? Richard asked Sarah. Beta version is functional. I'm not happy with the interface on mobile, and there are some edge cases in the prediction algorithm that need refinement, but it works. It's fast, it's accurate, and it's demonstrably better than Meridian's current offering. Legal filings? Margaret looked up from her laptop. Ready to go. I have the IP claim drafted, the injunction prepared, and a particularly nasty breach of fiduciary duty complaint against Victoria. Personally, should we choose to go that route? Fiduciary duty, I asked. She had a legal obligation as CEO to disclose material information to the board. The affair with Damien, the decision to promote him over more qualified candidates, the potential conflicts of interest in the acquisition, all of it could be construed as breach of duty. Margaret's smile was cold. We probably won't file that one unless she pushes us, but it's nice to have in reserve. Richard stood and walked to the timeline we'd drawn on the whiteboard. 12 days. That's all we have left. Then we execute, and this becomes public and messy and very, very complicated. Any second thoughts? Sarah asked, looking at me. I thought about Victoria's hand on Damien's arm, about the house that felt like a museum, about 7 years of building something only to be erased in a conference room. None, I said. That night, I came home to find Victoria in the living room, laptop open, surrounded by documents. She looked up when I entered, and I saw exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that goes deeper than lack of sleep. Hey, she said, I didn't hear you come in. Just got back from dinner. The lie came easily now. How's the acquisition going? Complicated. The buyers are requesting additional documentation, asking questions about our technical capabilities, our talent retention rates. She rubbed her eyes. It's normal for this stage, but it's exhausting. I'm sure it'll work out. I hope so. This deal, It's everything, Daniel. It's validation that what we built matters, that it's worth something. What we built. The phrase hung in the air between us, sharp and bitter. I'm sure it is, I said neutrally. She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her expression. Regret, guilt, doubt. But it passed before I could name it. I've been thinking, she said slowly. After the acquisition closes, after everything settles, maybe we should talk, really talk, about us, about what comes next. Okay. I know things have been hard. I know I've been distant. But maybe there's a way forward. Maybe we can figure out. Victoria, I kept my voice gentle. Let's not do this now. You're exhausted. You have a deal to close. We can talk after. Relief flooded her face. Yeah, you're right. After. She went back to her documents, and I went upstairs to the guest room, where I opened my encrypted laptop and sent a message to the team. 12 days. Stay focused. We're almost there. Richard's response was immediate. Almost there. And Daniel, when this is over, when everything comes out, you might want to find somewhere else to stay. Things are going to get ugly. He was right. I knew he was right. But I had 12 more days to pretend. 12 more days to sleep down the hall from the woman who destroyed my career and betrayed my trust. 12 more days to maintain the performance of a lifetime. And then I would burn it all down. Day 32 began with an email I wasn't expecting. I was at a coffee shop 3 miles from the house. My new routine since working from home felt like being under surveillance, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown address. The subject line read, "You should know the truth." Every instinct screamed not to open it. Phishing scam, malware, someone from Meridian's legal team trying to trap me into revealing something. But curiosity won out, the way it always does when you're already knee-deep in deception. The email contained a single attachment, a video file, no message, no signature. I downloaded it to an isolated folder, scanned it 3 times for viruses, and finally opened it. The footage was grainy, clearly taken from a security camera. The timestamp read, 4 months ago, the Napa leadership retreat that Richard had mentioned. The location appeared to be a hotel hallway, upscale, the kind of place where tech companies held off-site strategic planning sessions. Victoria appeared on screen at 11:47 p.m., walking down the corridor. She was wearing the blue dress I remembered her packing for that trip. Her hair down, a wine glass in her hand. She stopped at a door, room 847, and knocked. Damien answered wearing a hotel robe, and nothing else. They didn't speak. Victoria stepped inside. He closed the door behind her, and the timestamp jumped to 3:22 a.m. when she emerged, her dress wrinkled, her hair disheveled, walking quickly back down the hallway. The video ended. I sat staring at my phone's blank screen for a long time, my coffee growing cold beside me. I should have felt something: anger, betrayal, vindication. Instead, I felt numb. This was proof, incontrovertible evidence of what Richard had told me, what I'd suspected, what I'd known deep down but hadn't wanted to name. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown sender. There are 6 more videos, hotel records from 4 different cities, phone records, credit card receipts. If you want them, they're yours. You deserve to know what she is. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Someone who knows what it's like to be discarded. Good luck with Orion, Daniel. Make it count." The sender went offline. The email address, when I tried to trace it, bounced through proxy servers in 3 countries before disappearing into digital smoke. Someone knew about Orion. Someone who wasn't on our team. Someone who'd been following closely enough to know my name, my situation, my plans. I called Richard. "We have a bigger leak than we thought," I said. By the time I reached the office, Richard had assembled the full team. I showed them the video, the emails, the anonymous message about Orion. Sarah immediately started trying to trace the sender. Margaret took notes with her fountain pen, her expression unreadable. Tyler watched the video 3 times, his jaw getting tighter with each viewing. "This is good for us," Margaret said finally. Evidence of an affair, captured on hotel security footage, directly contradicting any claims Victoria might make about the relationship being professional. "That's what you're focused on?" I asked. "Not the fact that someone unknown knows about Orion." "I'm focused on leverage. This video is leverage." She pointed at my phone. "But yes, the leak is concerning. Sarah, any progress on the trace?" Sarah shook her head, still typing. "Whoever sent this knows what they're doing. The email routing is sophisticated, government-level encryption, probably military-grade anonymization protocols. This isn't some amateur with a grudge." "So who is it?" Tyler asked. "Who else knows about Orion?" "Maybe someone from Meridian's board," Richard suggested. "They'd have the resources, the motivation, the technical capability." "Why would they help Daniel?" "Because they're not helping Daniel. They're protecting themselves. If Victoria's affair becomes public, if it's revealed that she promoted Damien based on personal rather than professional criteria, the board becomes liable. They approved his appointment. They signed off on the acquisition. If it all collapses, they need plausible deniability." It made a twisted kind of sense. Board members were famous for saving their own skins, for positioning themselves on the right side of disasters before they fully unfolded. "Or," Sarah said slowly, still focused on her screen, "it's someone who works at one of the hotels. Someone with access to security footage who recognized Victoria from news articles about Meridian. Someone who put together that you were her husband and decided to, I don't know, help." "That's a lot of coincidence," I said. "True. But the alternative is that someone's been tracking you, watching Orion develop, and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. That's even more unsettling." She was right. Both possibilities were disturbing. One meant our operation was compromised. The other meant I had an unknown ally with unknown motives. "Does it change our timeline?" I asked Richard. He considered for a long moment. "No. If anything, it confirms we're on the right track. Someone wants Victoria exposed. Someone wants this acquisition to fail. We're not alone in this." "That doesn't make me feel better." "It should. It means we have leverage we didn't know about. It means Victoria has enemies beyond just you." He gestured to my phone. "Forward me everything. Margaret will add it to our evidence file. And Daniel?" "Yes?" "Stop checking your email on unsecured devices. If someone can send you anonymous videos, they can track your responses. From now on, all communication goes through encrypted channels only." I nodded, feeling foolish for not thinking of that myself. This was why Richard was worth $800 million, and I was living in a guest room. Tyler cleared his throat. "Speaking of communication, we need to finalize the departure announcements. I've drafted identical resignation letters for all 12 recruits. They'll submit them simultaneously next Friday at 9 a.m. That's 5 days from now." "What's the expected fallout?" Richard asked. "Immediate chaos. Meridian's entire analytics division loses its senior leadership. The buyers will hear about it within hours, probably from LinkedIn, since everyone's going to update their profiles at the same time. Victoria will have to explain why 12 critical employees just walked out. And she'll know exactly who orchestrated it," Sarah added, looking at me. "Good," I said. "Let her know." Margaret set down her pen. "Once the resignations hit, Victoria will almost certainly reach out to you. She'll want answers. She might threaten legal action. She might try to negotiate. How do you plan to respond?" I'd been thinking about this question for days. What would I say when Victoria finally confronted me? When she demanded to know if I was behind Orion, behind the Exodus, behind the systematic dismantling of everything she'd worked toward? "I'll tell her the truth," I said. "That she fired the wrong person. That she underestimated what I was capable of. That actions have consequences." "Poetic," Margaret said dryly, "but legally risky." I'd recommend saying nothing. Refer her to me for all communication. Don't engage, don't explain. Don't give her ammunition she can use against you. She already has ammunition. She has lawyers, resources, the entire weight of Meridian behind her. For now. But in 5 days, Meridian's weight shifts considerably. In 5 days, you hold the cards. Richard stood, walked to the window overlooking the city. There's one more thing we need to discuss. After the resignations, after the IP claim, after everything becomes public. What's your endgame, Daniel? I don't understand. What do you want from this? Revenge? Justice? Financial success? He turned to face me, because those are 3 different outcomes requiring 3 different strategies. If you want revenge, we crush her completely. The affair goes public, the acquisition fails, Meridian's valuation collapses. If you want justice, we force accountability, make her answer for what she did, but leave room for the company to survive. If you want financial success, we focus on building Orion into something so valuable that Meridian becomes irrelevant. Can't I have all 3? Not optimally. Each path requires sacrifices. Revenge costs you the moral high ground. Justice costs you maximum financial gain. Success costs you the satisfaction of watching her fall. I thought about Victoria's hand on Damien's arm, about the video of them at the hotel, about sitting in the guest room while she slept down the hall, building a future that didn't include me. I want her to understand, I said finally. I want her to know exactly what she threw away. I want her to lie awake at night, realizing that the person she dismissed, the husband she betrayed, the employee she fired, that I was the most valuable thing she had, and she destroyed it for nothing. The room was silent. Then we focus on success, Richard said. We make Orion so successful, so revolutionary, so obviously superior that every time Victoria sees our name in the news, reads about our growth, hears our company mentioned, she'll know. She'll understand exactly what she lost. And the affair? Margaret asked. The evidence? We hold it in reserve. We don't release it unless she forces our hand. Richard looked at me. Does that work for you? It did. It was cleaner than revenge, more dignified than public humiliation, and infinitely more satisfying than simply destroying her. Yes, I said. Tyler pulled up a presentation on his laptop. Then let's talk about launch strategy. 5 days until the exodus. 7 days until we go public with Orion. We need press releases, media contacts, investor presentations. We spent the next 3 hours planning every detail of our public emergence. Who we'd contact first, which journalists covered tech industry news, how we'd frame the narrative. Not as revenge, but as innovation. Not as a scorned husband, but as a visionary entrepreneur who'd been held back by corporate mediocrity and finally broke free. The story practically wrote itself. By the time I left the office, it was nearly 8 p.m. I'd missed 6 calls from Victoria and a dozen texts asking where I was. I called her back from the car. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been trying to reach you all day." "Job interviews," I lied. 3 different companies back to back. My phone died. "Oh." The anger in her voice softened. "How did they go?" "Good. Really good, actually. One of them might turn into an offer." "That's great, Daniel. I'm happy for you." Was she? I studied my reflection in the rear-view mirror, tried to see what she saw when she looked at me. A problem solved, an obstacle removed, or just someone she used to love before ambition and Damien and $240 million got in the way. "Where are you now?" she asked. "Heading home. Should I pick up dinner?" "I already ate at the office, but I'll be home in an hour. We should talk." My stomach tightened. About what? About us. About what happens next. I've been thinking about what I said the other night, and She paused. "Let's just talk when you get home, okay?" "Okay." I drove home slowly, my mind racing through possibilities. What did she want to talk about? Had she figured something out? Had her lawyers found evidence of Orion? Or was this something else entirely? Guilt, maybe, or a crisis of conscience about the affair. The house was dark when I arrived. I let myself in, turned on lights, and waited. Victoria came home at 9:47, carrying her laptop bag and looking exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her heels, and stood in the foyer staring at me. "The acquisition is falling apart," she said. Everything in me went still. What? The buyers are getting cold feet. They're asking for additional warranties, requesting deeper due diligence, questioning our talent retention metrics. She ran her hands through her hair. They somehow found out that we've had higher than normal turnover in the past 6 months. They're worried about brain drain, about losing institutional knowledge. Because 12 of your best people are about to quit in 5 days, I thought. Because your technical division is about to implode, and they can sense it coming. "What does that mean for the deal?" I asked. "It means it might not close, or it closes at a reduced valuation, or it closes with so many conditions and clawbacks that it's not worth doing." She looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months: vulnerability, fear. "Daniel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Okay. Are you planning something? Is there something I should know about?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded and dangerous. I could tell her the truth, could lay it all out. Orion, the recruitment, the IP claim, everything. Could give her a chance to stop it, to negotiate, to find some middle ground. Or I could lie. One more time. 5 more days. "What would I be planning?" I asked. "I'm unemployed, Vic. I'm trying to find a new job and figure out what's left of my life. I'm not exactly in a position to sabotage a corporate acquisition." She searched my face, looking for the lie. I held her gaze, steady and calm, and let her see exactly what I wanted her to see. A defeated man, tired and broken, no threat to anyone. Finally, she nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'm just paranoid because everything's falling apart." "It'll work out," I said. "It always does." She smiled weakly. "I hope you're right." She went upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. I stood in the foyer for a long time, my heart hammering, my hands shaking from the adrenaline of lying to her face. 5 more days. 5 more days and the countdown ended. 5 more days and everything changed forever. Day 37. Friday, 8:47 a.m. I was sitting in a conference room at Richard's office, surrounded by our entire team, watching the clock tick toward 9 Hoki. 13 minutes until 12 people simultaneously submitted their resignations to Meridian Tech. 13 minutes until the first domino fell. My phone sat on the table in front of me, silent and accusing. Victoria had left for work at 6 a.m. without saying goodbye. Too consumed by the acquisition crisis to notice that I was barely sleeping, barely eating, barely holding myself together. Sarah was running final checks on Orion's servers, making sure our platform could handle the traffic spike we were expecting. Tyler had his laptop open to LinkedIn, ready to coordinate the synchronized profile updates. Margaret reviewed documents with the focused intensity of a surgeon before a complex operation. Richard stood by the windows, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up below us. He'd been unusually quiet this morning, and I wondered if he was having second thoughts. This was his $50 million on the line, his reputation, his bet on me. "You know," he said without turning around, "I've destroyed a lot of companies in my career. Hostile takeovers, leveraged buyouts, strategic bankruptcies. I've made billions dismantling things other people built." The room went quiet. "But I've never done anything quite like this. Never helped someone burn down their own creation, their own marriage, their own past." He turned to face me. "Are you absolutely certain this is what you want?" I thought about Victoria's face when she'd fired me, about Damien's smirk, About 4 months of lies and the video of them at the hotel and the way she'd asked me last night if I was planning something, already knowing the answer but hoping she was wrong. I'm certain, I said, because there's still time to stop. We could call it off, dissolve Orion, let the acquisition proceed. You could walk away with your severance and find another job and rebuild your life somewhere else. And let her win? It's not about winning, Daniel. It's about what you can live with after the smoke clears. Richard's expression was serious, almost paternal. I've won a lot of battles. I've also lost some. And I can tell you from experience, the victories you can't live with are worse than the defeats. I looked around the table. Sarah, who'd spent 3 weeks building something revolutionary on an impossible timeline. Tyler, who'd convinced 12 brilliant people to risk their careers for a company that didn't exist yet. Margaret, who'd prepared legal documents that would detonate a $100 million acquisition. They'd all bet on me, believed in me, followed me into this war. I can live with this, I said. What I can't live with is doing nothing. Richard held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. All right then, Tyler, what's our status? All 12 recruits are standing by. Resignation letters drafted and ready to submit through Meridian's HR portal. LinkedIn profiles pre-written, waiting to go live. I've got confirmations from everyone in the past hour. They're all still committed. Sarah? Platform is stable. We're running at 20% capacity, with room to scale to 500% if needed. PR website goes live at 9:15. Press releases are queued. Margaret? IP claim is ready to file at 10 a.m., exactly 60 minutes after the resignations hit. Injunction paperwork is prepared if Meridian tries to enforce non-competes. I've got associates standing by at the courthouse. Richard checked his watch. 9 minutes. Daniel, any final words for the team? I stood, moved to the whiteboard where we'd mapped out this plan 6 weeks ago. The timeline was almost complete now. All the boxes checked, all the contingencies planned. In 9 minutes, we'd find out if we'd thought of everything. Whatever happens today, I said, thank you, all of you, for believing that this was worth doing, for risking your reputations and your time and your careers to help me, to help us build something better. Speech, Tyler called out, grinning despite the tension. That was the speech. That was terrible. No wonder Victoria fired you. The laughter broke some of the tension. Even Margaret smiled. All right, Richard said. 7 minutes. Tyler, send the signal to your recruits. Sarah, prepare to bring the site live. Margaret, be ready to file the moment I give the word. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Board meeting at 10. Buyers are demanding answers about our technical team structure. Do you know anything about unusual departures or recruitment activities? My hands went cold. She knew, or suspected, or had finally put the pieces together. I showed the text to Richard. Doesn't matter, he said. In 6 minutes, suspicion becomes reality. Don't respond. I set the phone down and watched the clock. 9:00 a.m. Tyler hit send. Somewhere in the city, 12 people opened their laptop and submitted identical resignation letters through Meridian's HR system. 12 carefully worded paragraphs explaining that they were pursuing other opportunities, effective immediately. Thank you for the experience and professional development. 12 resignations that would arrive in the HR director's inbox simultaneously, triggering every alarm system Meridian had. 12 departures that would gut the company's technical capabilities. My phone exploded. Victoria calling, then texting, then calling again. What did you do? Daniel, answer your phone now. I know this is you. I silenced it and watched Tyler's screen instead. Our recruits were updating their LinkedIn profiles in real time, all announcing their new positions at Orion with identical language. Thrilled to announce I'm joining Orion as positioned to build the future of predictive analytics. Within 90 seconds, the tech industry's algorithm-driven gossip machine kicked into gear. Comments appeared. Congratulations from colleagues. Questions from recruiters. And then, from industry analysts and journalists, the questions that would destroy Victoria's acquisition, 12 senior people leaving Meridian simultaneously. What's going on at Meridian Tech? Is this related to the rumored acquisition? Sarah brought the Orion website live at 9:15 exactly as planned. It was beautiful, clean, professional, showcasing our technology without revealing too much. A contact form for interested clients, a careers page already listing 15 open positions, and, at the bottom, in small text, founded by Daniel Morrison, formerly Chief Strategy Officer at Meridian Tech. My phone continued to vibrate with Victoria's calls. I counted 12 attempts before she finally stopped. Then, at 9:23, a different number. Damien. I answered. You son of a bitch. His voice was shaking with rage. You planned this. You recruited our entire technical team. Do you have any idea what you've done? I built a company, I said calmly. Just like I built Meridian's strategy division. The difference is, this time, I won't be fired for it. This is corporate sabotage. We're going to sue you into oblivion. You're going to what, Damien? Enforce non-competes that don't exist. Claim ownership of IP you never owned. File charges for recruiting people who had every right to leave. I stood and walked to the windows, looked out at the city where Victoria was probably losing her mind right now. You should have read my employment contract more carefully. Section 7, subsection C. I own the core technology, always have. Meridian just licensed it. Silence on the other end. That's right, I continued. The algorithms your acquisition is built on, mine. The predictive analytics framework worth $400 million, mine. And in about 30 minutes, I'm filing a formal IP claim that's going to blow your deal apart. Victoria will destroy you for this. Victoria already destroyed me. I'm just returning the favor. I ended the call and turned back to the team. Margaret, file the claim. Now. She nodded and made a call to her associate at the courthouse. I heard her giving instructions, spelling out case numbers, confirming that all the paperwork was in order. At 9:47, the IP claim became public record. At 9:51, the press releases went out to every major tech publication. At 9:58, Richard's phone rang. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then smiled. That was my contact at the buyer consortium, he said. They've just been informed of both the departures and the IP claim. They're suspending the acquisition pending investigation. Suspended. Not canceled, but suspended. Which meant Victoria still had a chance to salvage it, to explain, to negotiate. Which meant we weren't done yet. Phase 2, Richard said, looking at me. Your move. I'd been dreading this moment and anticipating it in equal measure. Phase 2 meant going to Meridian, confronting Victoria face to face, laying out exactly what I'd done and why. Tyler offered to come with me. Sarah volunteered to provide technical backup, but this was something I needed to do alone. Wish me luck, I said. You don't need luck, Richard replied. You have truth. That's better. The drive to Meridian took 20 minutes through mid-morning traffic. I parked in my old spot. They hadn't reassigned it yet. The painted letters still read, Morrison, CSO, and walked through doors I'd entered hundreds of times before. The lobby was chaos. Employees clustered in groups, phones out, voices raised. I caught fragments of conversation. 12 people at once. Saw on LinkedIn, acquisition is falling apart. Nobody noticed me at first. I made it to the elevator, pressed the button for the 5th floor, and rode up in silence. The executive suite was worse. Victoria's assistant saw me emerge from the elevator, and her face went pale. Mr. Morrison, you can't be here. Ms. Chen is in a meeting, and... Tell her I'm here. Tell her we need to talk. Now. Sir, I really don't think... The conference room door opened. Victoria stood in the doorway, and I barely recognized her. Her suit was wrinkled, her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying or hadn't slept or both. Behind her, I could see the board members, their faces grave. Damien stood in the corner, his expression murderous. The company's general counsel was on speakerphone, her voice tinny and urgent. Contractual obligations under Section 12. Victoria saw me, and everything in her face shut down. The vulnerability, the exhaustion, the fear, all of it vanished behind the CEO mask I knew so well. "Everyone out," she said quietly. "Victoria, we need to discuss." One of the board members started. "Out now. Give me the room." They filed out slowly, reluctantly, the board members shooting me dark looks, Damien pausing as if he wanted to say something before thinking better of it. The general counsel stayed on speakerphone until Victoria hit the mute button. Then it was just us, husband and wife, CEO and fired employee, victor and defeated. Except the roles had reversed. "It was you," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Yes." Orion, the recruits, the IP claim, all of it. "Yes." She walked to the conference table and sat down heavily, like her legs wouldn't hold her anymore. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day you fired me. Since the moment Richard Castellano told me about your affair with Damien and your plan to sell the company and erase me from the story." She flinched. "Richard Castellano. He's my partner now. 50 million in funding, 60-40 equity split in my favor. We built in 6 weeks what took you 7 years, and we built it better. The IP claim is legitimate. Section 7, subsection C of my original employment contract. You never owned the core algorithms, Victoria. You just forgot to check." She put her head in her hands. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "The acquisition is suspended. The buyers want proof of IP ownership before they'll proceed. If we can't provide it, you can't. Because I own it. Because I always owned it. Then the deal dies. Probably. And Meridian's valuation collapses. Almost certainly." She stood abruptly, walked to the windows overlooking the city. The same view I'd had from my office. The office that was probably Damien's now. "Why?" she asked. "If you wanted revenge, you could have just exposed the affair. You could have made me look bad without destroying the company. Why burn it all down?" "Because the company was mine too. Because I built it with you, for you, believing we were partners. And you threw me away like I was nothing." I moved closer, not touching her, just close enough that she had to hear every word. "You want to know why, Victoria? Because you made a choice. You chose Damien over me. You chose money over loyalty. You chose to erase my contribution and pretend I was dead weight. You were holding us back. No, I was the best thing you had, and you were too blind to see it." I pulled out my phone, showed her the video from the hotel. Her face went white. 4 months, Victoria. 4 months you lied to me. 4 months you planned this whole thing, the affair, the promotion, the acquisition, my termination. You orchestrated every detail. Daniel, so I orchestrated something too. I built something better. I recruited your best people because they were never really yours. They were talented people who I hired and mentored and believed in. And when I offered them equity and respect and a chance to build something that mattered, they chose me over you, just like you chose Damien over me. What do you want? Her voice broke. What do I have to do to fix this? Nothing, because it's not fixable. The acquisition is dead. Your technical team is gone. Your valuation will tank when investors realize what you've lost, and Orion will rise from the ashes of everything you destroyed. She was crying now, openly, her shoulders shaking. I'm sorry. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I made mistakes. I was wrong about Damien, wrong about you, wrong about everything. Please. Please, there has to be a way. There isn't. I turned to leave, and she grabbed my arm. Her touch felt foreign, like a stranger's. Don't go, she whispered. Please. I love you. I still love you. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No love, no hate, no anger, just emptiness where she used to be. No, you don't, I said gently. You love what I represented. The stability, the partnership, the idea of us. But you stopped loving me, the actual person, a long time ago. Maybe I stopped loving you too. Maybe this was over before it ended. I pulled my arm free and walked toward the door. What happens now? She called after me. I stopped, looked back one last time. Now you figure out how to explain to your board why 12 of your best people just left for a competitor. Why your acquisition is falling apart. Why the algorithms your company is built on belong to someone else. I paused. And I go build an empire. I walked out of the conference room, past the gathered employees and board members, into the elevator and down to the lobby and out to my car. My phone was ringing. Richard. How did it go? He asked. It's done. And I feel... I searched for the word. Free, vindicated, victorious. None of them fit. I feel ready to build something new. Good, because we have work to do. Can you be back at the office in 30 minutes? We've got 3 investor meetings this afternoon and a call with TechCrunch at 4. I'll be there. I drove away from Meridian Tech for the last time, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. The war was over. Now came the victory. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of Orion's new headquarters, 23rd floor, corner office with views of both the river and the city skyline, and watched the sun set over a landscape I'd conquered. Behind me, through the glass walls, I could see my team working late despite the hour. Sarah was hunched over her laptop, optimizing our latest algorithm update. Tyler was on a call with Tokyo, coordinating our international expansion. Margaret's paralegal was delivering documents that probably meant we were suing someone, or being sued, or both. This was normal now. The chaos, the growth, the relentless forward momentum of building something that mattered. My phone buzzed. A notification from LinkedIn. Meridian Tech announces restructuring, significant workforce reduction. I opened the article. The photo showed Victoria at a press conference, her expression carefully neutral as she explained to investors why Meridian was downsizing by 40%, why the acquisition had fallen through, why the company's valuation had dropped from $600 million to $200 million in 6 months. She looked older, tired, but still composed, still fighting, still trying to salvage something from the wreckage. I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, not quite regret, just recognition that we'd both lost something in this war, even if I'd won. Still checking on her? Richard's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him approach, but that was his gift, moving through spaces like he owned them, which he usually did. Old habits, I said. She filed for divorce last week. Did you see? I had. The papers had been delivered to the apartment I'd rented downtown, a sleek modern space that felt nothing like the house Victoria and I had shared. I'd signed them without reading the details, sent them back through my lawyer, and tried not to think about what it meant that our marriage could be dissolved with a few signatures. Damien's out too, Richard continued, joining me at the railing. Fired 3 months ago when the board finally acknowledged that promoting him was a catastrophic mistake. Last I heard, he was working at a crypto startup in Austin. Good for him. You don't care? I cared 6 months ago. Now, I shrugged. Orion's valuation hit $2 billion last quarter. We've got clients in 15 countries. Our platform processes more data in a day than Meridian did in a month. I won, Richard. Completely. Why would I waste energy caring about where Damien ended up? He smiled, that proud expression I'd come to recognize. You've changed. When we started this, you were angry, hurt, looking for revenge. And now? Now you're a CEO. Now you're thinking like someone building an empire instead of burning one down. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere in the past 6 months, between investor meetings and product launches and hiring our 100th employee, I'd stopped being the wounded ex-husband and become something else, someone who looked at Meridian's collapse not with satisfaction, but with the cool calculation of a competitor spotting weakness. "There's something I want to discuss," Richard said. "An opportunity." "I'm listening." Meridian's board reached out through back channels. They want to sell, not to the Chinese consortium. That ship sailed, but to someone who understands the technology, who could integrate it properly, who has the vision to rebuild what Victoria destroyed. It took me a moment to understand what he was suggesting. "You want Orion to acquire Meridian. I want you to consider it. The valuation is depressed. The technology, while inferior to ours, still has value. The client list is substantial. And the optics," he paused. "The optics of you buying the company that fired you, that's the kind of story that becomes legend." I turned to look through the glass at our office, at the team I'd built, the culture we'd created, the thing we were becoming. Orion was lean, fast, innovative. Everything Meridian had stopped being. "Acquiring them would slow us down," I said. "We'd inherit their bureaucracy, their debt, their damaged reputation." "True, but you'd also eliminate your primary competitor. You'd control 90% of the predictive analytics market. You'd own the company you built and the company that tried to destroy you. And Victoria? She'd be gone. Part of any acquisition deal would be her immediate resignation. The board's already planning to force her out regardless. This would just accelerate the timeline." I imagined it, walking into Meridian as its owner, sitting in the CEO's office where Victoria had made the decision to fire me, restructuring the company in my image, keeping what worked, and burning away what didn't. It would be the ultimate victory, the complete reversal. It would also be petty, and beneath what Orion was becoming. "No," I said. Richard raised an eyebrow. "No. Meridian is the past. Let it collapse or survive on its own. We don't need it." I gestured at our office. "This is the future. Fast, hungry, innovative. The moment we start acquiring our competition instead of outcompeting them, we become what they are. That's very noble. Also, potentially short-sighted." "Maybe. But I didn't build Orion to get revenge on Victoria. I built it to prove I could build something better. Mission accomplished." I turned to face him fully. "Besides, there's something more interesting I want to pursue." "Oh?" "Sarah's been working on AI integration. Real AI, not the marketing bullshit everyone else is selling. If we can combine our predictive analytics with actual machine learning, we could offer capabilities that don't exist anywhere else in the market." Richard's expression shifted from skeptical to intrigued. "That's ambitious. Also expensive. We raised $50 million in Series B last month. We're profitable. We can afford ambitious." "You really have changed." He extended his hand. "All right, no acquisition. We focus on innovation instead of domination. But, Daniel." "Yes?" "If Meridian does collapse, if their assets go to auction, we should at least consider picking up their client list. Waste not, want not." I shook his hand, laughing. "Deal." That evening, I had dinner with my brother for the first time in 3 months. Michael had watched the whole Orion saga unfold from the sidelines, offering support and occasional advice, but mostly staying out of my way while I rebuilt my life. We met at a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place that catered to celebrating tech executives and their inflated expense accounts. I'd chosen it specifically because 6 months ago, I couldn't have afforded it. Now, I could buy it. "You look good," Michael said when I arrived. "Less like you're about to murder someone." "I was never going to murder anyone." "You were thinking about it." "Fair." We ordered drinks, bourbon for me, scotch for him, and fell into the easy rhythm of brothers who'd known each other their entire lives. "So," he said after the waiter left, "billionaire yet?" "On paper, the valuation is $2 billion, I own 60%, but it's not liquid. If I tried to sell, the value would collapse. Still, $2 billion. Dad would have lost his mind. Our father had died 3 years ago, long before any of this started. He'd been a small business owner, a hardware store in the suburbs that barely broke even, and he'd never understood why I'd gone into tech instead of something practical. He'd have hated Orion, I said. Too risky, too ambitious, too much potential for failure. He'd also be proud, secretly, where he didn't have to admit it. Michael raised his glass. To Dad, who taught us that the only way to win was to work harder than everyone else. To Dad, we drank, and I felt the familiar ache of missing someone who'd never see what I'd become. What about Mom? I asked. Have you told her? About Orion? She Googles you weekly. She knows. She also wants to know when you're coming to visit and whether you're eating enough. Classic Mom. The world could be ending, and she'd want to know if you'd had breakfast. I'll visit soon, after we close the Series C round. You're raising more money? You just raised $50 million. That was 3 months ago. $50 million doesn't last long when you're scaling globally. I explained our expansion plans, Asia-Pacific offices, European market entry, the AI integration that Sarah was leading. Michael listened with the slightly glazed expression of someone who didn't really understand tech, but was trying to be supportive. And Victoria? He asked when I finished. How's she handling all this? I told him about the divorce papers, the restructuring, Meridian's collapse. Do you feel bad? He asked. Even a little? I considered the question honestly. Did I feel bad that my wife, ex-wife, had lost everything? That the company we'd built together had been gutted? That her reputation was in tatters while mine soared? No, I said finally. She made her choices. I made mine. She chose betrayal and shortcuts and Damien. I chose to build something better. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Michael studied me for a long moment. You know what's weird? You sound exactly like her. Like Victoria. That same cold calculation, that same business is business detachment. His words hit harder than I expected. I'm nothing like her. You sure about that? Because from where I'm sitting, you took everything she did to you and did it back to her, only more efficiently. You out-Victoria'd Victoria. That's not... I stopped. Was he right? Had I become the thing I'd hated? Had winning required me to turn into a version of myself I didn't recognize? I'm not saying it's bad, Michael continued. Maybe that's what it takes to succeed at your level. Maybe you can't build an empire without becoming someone who can make hard choices and not lose sleep over them. But Danny... He used my childhood nickname, the one nobody else called me anymore. Don't lose yourself completely. Don't wake up in 10 years and realize you sacrificed everything human about yourself for a valuation number. The waiter arrived with our steaks, and we ate in contemplative silence. Later, walking back to my car, I called Sarah. Hey, she answered. What's up? The AI integration project. How far along are we? Maybe 60%? Why? How would you feel about open sourcing some of it? Not the core IP, but some of the foundational work. Let researchers and smaller companies build on what we're creating. Silence on the other end. Then, that's not what I expected you to say. It would cost us competitive advantage. It would also push the entire industry forward. Rising tide lifts all boats, right? Who are you and what have you done with Daniel Morrison? I laughed, just thinking about what kind of company we want to be. Call it a work in progress. 3 months later, 9 months after the detonation, I received an email from an unexpected source. The subject line read, I owe you an apology. The sender was Victoria. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. Daniel, I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but there are things I need to say, and I'm hoping you'll give me 5 minutes of your time to read them. You were right about everything. about Damien, about the acquisition, about me losing sight of what mattered. I told myself I was making smart business decisions, that I was doing what was necessary for the company to grow. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared that I wasn't good enough. Scared that the success we'd built was luck rather than skill. Scared that if I didn't keep pushing, keep scaling, keep proving myself, it would all collapse. So I pushed away the one person who actually believed in me, the partner who'd built everything with me. I convinced myself you were holding me back when you were actually holding me together. Damien was a mistake. Not because he was incompetent, though he was, but because I chose him for the wrong reasons. I chose him because he made me feel powerful and desired, and like I was more than just a CEO. I chose him because it was easier than facing the problems in our marriage. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for another chance. I know I destroyed that possibility when I destroyed you, but I wanted you to know that watching Orion succeed, watching you build something better than what we had, it doesn't make me angry. It makes me proud. And it makes me ashamed that I didn't see what I had until I lost it. Meridian is dying. The board is forcing me out next month. They'll bring in new leadership, try to salvage what's left, probably fail. And I'll move on to something else, somewhere else, carrying the knowledge that I had everything and threw it away. You built an empire, Daniel, not because you wanted revenge, though I'm sure that was part of it, but because you're brilliant and visionary and capable of things I never gave you credit for. I hope you find happiness, real happiness, not just success. And I hope someday you can think of me without anger. I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and walked to the window of my apartment, looking out at the city where both our empires had risen and fallen and risen again. I could respond, could tell her I forgave her, or that I didn't, or that it didn't matter anymore because we were different people living different lives. But what was there to say that hadn't already been said in conference rooms and divorce papers and the steady drumbeat of Orion's success? Instead, I did something I hadn't done in 9 months. I let myself remember the good parts, the early days when we'd been partners in every sense, the late nights planning our future, the moment she'd said yes when I proposed, the wedding where we'd promised forever, believing we meant it. And then I let it go, all of it, the love, the betrayal, the revenge, the victory. I let it drift away like smoke, leaving behind only the lessons and the scars and the person I'd become. My phone buzzed. Tyler, investors are here for the Series C presentation. You coming? I texted back. On my way. There was an empire to build, a team counting on me, a future that had nothing to do with the past. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, leaving Victoria's email unanswered on my laptop. Some stories end with confrontation. Some end with reconciliation. This one ended with silence. And that, I realized as I stepped into the elevator, was exactly right. 1 year later, epilogue. Orion went public at a valuation of $8 billion. I rang the opening bell at the stock exchange with my team beside me. Sarah, Tyler, Margaret, and Richard, the people who'd believed in me when I had nothing but anger and a plan. The press called it the fastest rise in tech history. They wrote articles about my journey from fired executive to billionaire founder. They analyzed our technology, our strategy, our culture. They got most of it wrong, because the real story wasn't about revenge or redemption or even success. It was about the moment you decide who you're going to be when everything falls apart. It was about building something better from the ashes of what you lost. It was about learning that the people who betray you give you the greatest gift of all. They force you to become more than you ever imagined. Victoria sent a congratulations text that day. I didn't respond. Damien tried to apply for a job at Orion 6 months later. We didn't interview him. Meridian was acquired by a private equity firm and dismantled for parts. And I kept building, because in the end, that's all any of us can do. Build, grow, learn, become, and trust that somewhere along the way, we'll regret nothing. Final reflection as the camera pulls back from Daniel, standing at the window of Orion's headquarters, the city glittering below. If you've ever been dismissed, betrayed, or told you weren't enough, remember this: your value isn't determined by the people who couldn't see it. Your worth isn't defined by those who walked away. Build something better. Become someone stronger. And when they realize what they lost, when they finally understand what you were capable of all along, let your success be the only answer you need to give. Trust me, they'll regret it.